Caleb Leverett radio program is dedicated to debunking the delusional American mythology known as statism.
Initiation of force is always immoral.
Always think outside the government. Always, 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 always think outside the government.
Always, always, always.
Ooh, baby, I like it raw. Yeah, baby, I like it raw. Ooh, baby, I like it raw. Yeah, baby, I like it raw. Shimmy, shimmy, y'all, shimmy, yeah, shimmy, yeah. Give me the mic so I can take it away.
Good day to you, all you crazy cats. This is Caleb Leverett, no longer of Odessa, Texas. I am Austin, Texas's newest pledged attendee. I plan on making the pilgrimage down here. You are listening to the Caleb Leverett radio show on libertymovementradio.com, and I am fortunate enough to be in the company of Mr. John Bush of Austin, Texas. I would be remiss to say he was my co-host because I'm just like, I've always said I always wanted to be John Bush, and now he's here on the Caleb Leverett radio show. So I'm going to be co-host, and Mr. John Bush is host.
Yeah, the Caleb Leverett show. Thanks for coming out. We're broadcasting here live at Brave New Books, Brave New Bookstore, 1904 Guadalupe Street. If you happen to be listening to the Central Texas area, you got time to get on down here. We'll be broadcasting live through 10 p.m., rocking and rolling. Pretty exciting.
I'm giddy as a schoolgirl. I mean, I'm just being honest. I really am. I'm just as giddy as a schoolgirl. Yeah, what we're doing is we're down here, and there's a bunch of schmohawks that listen to the Caleb Leverett radio show, and we got schmohawks that we're trying. And schmohawk is our, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a term of endearment on our show that we use. And we're here to raise money and not just raise money, to raise excitement for the goings-on in New York City at the 420 event on April the 20th. And there's some dude y'all may have heard of. His name is Antonio Beeler, and he does this like cop filming thing, and well, and he shows and just reveals what they do, and he's here in the studio here at Brave New Books. He's actually setting up chairs. He's just the most gentle giant you'll ever meet in your life. I was actually intimidated when I first met him back at Liberty Fest West. Anyways, so we're getting the excitement going, raising awareness and money, and trying to get all these cool people up there for the 420 event. And again, I'm just tickled to death of where I'm at, being able to do such a thing. So, have we got Antonio's mic even hooked up yet?
No, we don't have Antonio's mic hooked up just yet. When were we going to bring Antonio on? I think we're also going to be hearing from Heather Fazio later this evening. Heather Fazio, ladies and gentlemen, yeah! Live studio audience, you can see how excited they are. You can tell by the round of applause we just heard. So we're going to be joined by Heather Fazio later. Also hear from Harlan Dietrich, the Harlan Dietrich of Brave New Books, bravenewbookstore.com. And the event that we're talking about is called Anarchy in the NYC. It's being put on by Ian Chaffee and Gigi Bowman and company. These are the folks that have brought you Liberty Fest New York City, which has inspired a lot of different spin-offs and other conferences that have taken place across the country. And we're trying to raise money to bring Antonio Beeler out so Antonio Beeler can share his message of police accountability, direct action, and he can share his admiration of Chief Art Acevedo to all the New Yorkers, and maybe sit down and have a meeting with Mayor Bloomberg and the NYPD commissioner and let them know what policing is all about. But yeah, the event again is going to be April 20th. 2013 in New York City. I guess the location is to be determined. I actually thought that the club was called To Be Determined when it said that there.
It's actually called, where is it at? It sounds like, hang on, I will find it.
So the club's somewhere in New York City, and the event is on April 20th. And myself will be speaking, as well as Caleb Leverett and the Antonio Beeler. That's Beeler with a U-E. And it looks to be an exciting event. I believe, Caleb, you're going to be doing a live stream. Is that correct?
Yes, live stream, and, well, for sure the radio version on LibertyMovementRadio.com. We're working on, that's part of another deal as far as raising money. We want to be able to live stream it, you stream it, whatever the video. I'm not the technical person. All I do is run my mouth, raise my kids, and fix engines, and I suck at everything else. So whatever it takes to bring able for people to actually watch. Some people prefer radio. They can download it, podcast it, whatever, listen to it later. Some people prefer watching it, watching TV type. So, and there's obviously costs in there. You know, people complain, particularly the big gigantic umbrella known as the libertarians, tend to complain, well, if you're really a libertarian, why are you charging for the event? Well, there's costs. We're trying to work in progress. It's the name of the venue. I just pulled it up. I didn't mean but this place called Work in Progress. It's not just saying Work in Progress. This is a work in progress. That's where
what I thought they meant.
Yeah, that's the name of it. It is called Work in Progress. It's actually the same place that we were at for Liberty Fest 3.
Oh, yeah.
That was the name of the venue.
Right on.
So, I mean, they've got bills. They've got property theft, stolen taxes, money they have to pay. So they charge for the event. People charge speaker fees. That's some do, some don't.
Are people complaining about having to pay a ticket to see a conference?
You would be surprised. Yeah, they do. They could. Well, we should be able to go for free. Well, yeah.
Freeloaders.
Maybe in 500 years, if society will ever not do the devolution, the idiocracy, if it would actually evolve to a more free, intelligent society, that would be great. But it's just, we're not. Yeah, there are costs. There's electricity to pay. There's food and venues and electricity and DJs and people behind the scenes that do a lot of things. It just costs a lot of money. And like I said, we are trying to raise money, A, to get Antonio there, and B, you know, I'm sponsoring not the entire event. I take that, by far not the entire, but I'm sponsoring the event myself. And you know, if for the people, I have committed to already going through Liberty Movement Radio. We're going to at least have it at that. Now, obviously, there is no charge to go to www.libertymovementradio.com. There's no charge. I mean, of course, you just go and you can listen to we'll have the whole show. All the speakers, Tracy Diaz, who's also, you know Tracy, another radio host here on LMR Radio. She and I, and Ben Farmer's going to be there as well, the Schmohawk, the King Schmohawk.
Schmohawk.
He's going to be there as well. And if you, like say, if you would have normally gone to the show, if you lived, 5 minutes away, but you live in, I don't know, Texas, and you can't just fly up there real quick because it's expensive. Those are the type of donations. If it would have been worth a $10 ticket, a $20 ticket to go in, then that's the type of donations that we're looking for. And of course, we're always looking for the hero. The hero with, comes through with some grand, I don't know, $100, $1,000, $500 big bonus for it. Maybe that'd be great. But yeah, if you would normally have gone, is there an echo?
No, we're doing good.
It's driving me crazy.
Why, do you hear an echo?
Yeah, or a fuzz sound. Do you not hear a fuzz sound? Let me check.
Just roll with it.
Chat room people, do y'all hear? I know there's a 20-second delay. Are you chat dudes hearing this fuzzy noise?
It's the fuzz. The police.
The fuzz is after me.
La Policia.
I've been hacked.
We saw Beeler's car out front. Did the fuzz... Oh! That's right. Antonio Beeler drives a classic Crown Victoria. So you can see him, and it looks like the police. And it's funny to catch the Peaceful Streets Project live stream, because it looks like you're watching an episode of Cops there. But did you happen to pick up on that fuzz and buzz after I plugged this in? Does the buzz go away when I unplug this, Caleb?
That went away.
Okay, well, problem solved. Peace and freedom.
Do you not need that cute little thingy plugged into that other thing?
Not for now.
Okay, cool.
We do not need the thing plugged into the other thing. So, the event, again, is April 20th, and that's part of the reason why Caleb Leverett came down here. But first, maybe we should get a little more acquainted with Mr. Caleb Leverett. For those in the audience that may not be familiar with the Caleb Leverett, a.k.a. the Odessa, Texas rabble-rouser.
Yeah, no, not anymore.
Oh, so Caleb's moving to Austin, but I guess he was born and raised in Odessa. And Caleb used to be a bit of, I don't know, I guess you would call yourself a neoconservative, would you?
Yeah, I was statist as hell, man.
So tell us how you got turned on to the philosophy of liberty, Caleb.
There was an event that happened in my life, of which I'm not going to tell anybody. A few close friends know what happened, but it's not important. The event happened to me. I used to worship Rush Limbaugh. I thought he did no wrong. His EIB, I've since coined EIBS. I do not deny.
What is EIB?
EIB, Excellence in Broadcasting? Did you not ever listen to Limbaugh? No,
I was never a big Limbaugh guy.
Cool. Yeah, that's what he calls it.
Jones guy. Alex Jones guy.
Yeah, that's what he calls it, Excellence in Broadcasting. But and I don't deny he's an excellent broadcaster. He's a great entertainer. I think he just broadcasts shit. I don't know there's no other way to put it.
Sums it up pretty nicely.
But I just began, after that thing happened to me, I began seeking ultimate truth in everything I did, in everything that was told to me, and I started listening. I actually heard Deborah Medina.
Deborah Medina.
She was on.
Give it up for Deborah Medina.
Yeah, I heard Deborah Medina on the local KCRS. She was running for governor against Slick Rick, and she really made some. She started giving libertarian points. I was like, whoa, who is this lady? I've always thought this way, but I've never heard anybody else think this way and actually speak that way. I like this person, so I did a little investigating and find out who she is, which turned me on later to Mr. Mike Church. Actually, I'd already listened to Mike Church some, but back when he was a statist. And
was that on Conservative Talk Radio?
Sirius XM, yeah,
okay.
the satellite. And I got into the Constitution thing, delve into the history, listen to Dr. Kevin Gutzman quite a bit, and that lasted about maybe 6 months, a year. And then I just really got tired of losing arguments to the voluntarists. And so
what kind of arguments?
Well, ultimately taxation theft. Because, that's the only way governments can exist. Do they not?
So are you saying... So you said you embraced the Constitution thanks to Mike Church, Deborah Medina, but then...
Well, and others. But, yeah, as far as the talking heads, yeah, those are the main two.
So then there's a different perspective that you began? Because most people say, oh, yeah, we need to restore the Constitution. They learn about this wonderful document written over 250 years ago that founded this country, and they think, well, that's the cat's pajamas. I think I got my number one goal in my head. We need to restore the Constitution. Then we'll all be free.
And then I had hosted this crazy idea with Ben Farmer, my Schmohawk partner, and I decided to host Liberty Fest West. And honestly, and I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass, John. I've told you this before. John, if you get a chance, Adam Kokesh has got his video up of agorism. What was it called? Constitution equals slavery, agorism equals freedom, or something like that.
That's what it was called.
Yeah, about a 30-minute speech. And it not only changed my life, and because I get a lot of shit from people who say, yeah, Caleb, you do real good, and you go along and you do all these great, wonderful things, and all of a sudden you stick your foot in your mouth, you say something crazy like, anarchy, and I've actually I've used your video. I've sent it to people at least a dozen times, and they actually watch. Say, you know what? I've never ever thought about it that way, because you gave some proper history. Whenever you put it in perspective, what was it you say? Yeah, the Constitution was great, but for white property owners, males, it was great for them, and that pretty much excluded what? What's the percentage?
Well, yeah, it was actually less than 90% of the people, more than 90% of the people that inhabited the geographic area known as America at the time of the signing of the Constitution even consented to the Constitution. In many ways, it was forced upon them. And that especially goes for the state of Rhode Island, who originally refused to even sign on to the Constitution because they were the only state, they were a state at the time, not a colony. They were the only state that actually put the Constitution to a popular referendum, and it was shot down by a large majority of the Rhode Island citizenry. So what the newly formed United States Congress did, all the 12 other states and colonies, was they instituted an economic embargo against Rhode Island in order to compel the state to join the Union. So I often find it inconsistent for people to be carrying the banner of freedom while also exclaiming the idea that we ought to restore the Constitution and stop there, because in many ways the Constitution created less freedom than there existed before the Constitution under the Articles of Confederation. And yeah, people say the Constitution created freedom, but as you were saying, it was freedom for a small class of privileged Anglo landowners, and women, African Americans, and non-landowners didn't even have a say, had no votes, and essentially people still, as you said, taxation is theft. There was massive geographic monopolies where everybody was essentially tax slaves, and they kicked up their money to the monopoly man.
No, I've got a question. I've always wanted to ask you this. Would you not say that that the Constitution did at least disperse or spread out the centralized authority from one single king to a single king and 535 congressmen? Would you say that it at least spread it out a little bit? It had maybe at a place at one time? Or what are your thoughts?
Sure. Well, I mean, before the American Revolution and before the U.S. Constitution, which, supposedly a document of limited government, although look how well it's done to limit government. It's failed completely at that task. Some people say the people failed, but I think the institution in itself is a failure. But, the American Revolution was entirely different than the signing of the Constitution, and the sentiment in 1776 was different from that in 1789 when the Constitution was signed, and that 1776 was a genuinely libertarian revolution to overthrow the existing power structure of a monarchy, top-down, hereditary, authoritarian ruler. And for a while, they had the Articles of Confederation, and there was a very decentralized, loose central government that didn't have taxing authority, didn't have the ability to regulate interstate commerce, which some people point to as a flaw.
No taxing authority?
There was no central taxing authority from the central government. The states had their own taxing mechanisms, and this was one of the quote-unquote the supposed flaws in the Constitution, although it sounds to me like more of a libertarian paradise than what we have now. But essentially, the Constitution was the throwback to the systems of monarchy. Originally, there was supposed to be hereditary Senate, which is something that Alexander Hamilton was pushing for. But in many ways, it was the existing system. They returned to the existing system of a small elite family that's still controlled. But really, it's just an illusion of freedom. And I think it was Patrick Henry, I forget who it was, that said, none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. Mm-hmm. And if you take a look at the bloodlines of the presidents, every single one of the presidents, they still are pretty much the same royal bloodlines that dominated the pre-Constitution period. So in many ways, we created an environment that, yes, it did allow for more freedom than there existed before, but that increase in freedom also led to an increase in prosperity, which also led to an increase in the size and growth of the government because the state exists as a parasite leeching off of the body politic through taxes. So if you create an environment where the individuals have more economic freedom, yet you're still taxing them, then you create the ability to actually have a world empire like we see with the United States of America, an economic and all the bases that we have all across the country, of course. That was, I believe, the United States has been able to reach a position of preeminence and being for now, the world's global superpower. I don't even know if we could even say that, the sole superpower at this particular point. But I think it's precisely because the American people have had a higher level of economic freedom than those in other countries, that the United States government, the federal government especially, has managed to grow to the proportions that we see today. So that's not to say that we shouldn't have more economic freedom, but when you have economic freedom or relative economic freedom alongside a strong parasitic central government, it's going to turn into what we have today, whether or not you have something written down on a piece of paper saying you're not allowed to usurp authority or not. That's my opinion, at least.
Well, I agree. I mean, it wasn't a Spooner. It said either the Constitution authorized the government we have today or it was powerless to prevent it. Mm-hmm. Either way, it's unfit to exist. Something along those lines?
Something along those lines.
But, man, you talk about people pulling the claws out. Something at me when I say, I just assume do away with the Constitution. I mean, people, they get almost almost violently
Yeah.
pissed off, and I still don't understand quite why. I guess I do understand a little bit. I used to be that way, so yeah, I understand.
Well, a lot of
it,
people
but-
gave an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, so to say that we should do away with the very document they gave an oath to, I imagine, would ruffle some people's feathers. And in their defense, there are movements of people that are wanting to do away with the Constitution and create an environment of less freedom. Likewise, there's some crazy cats, like the two sitting on this table, that wouldn't mind replacing the system of governance that was created from the U.S. Constitution with one that's based on genuinely libertarian principles. So a lot of people need to, if you're genuinely for a free market, which is the unhindered ability for free people to trade amongst one another for mutual benefit, then you should be against the U.S. Constitution, because many of the institutions set up in the U.S. Constitution, like the tariff, the external tariff around the border, that's antithetical to a free market. Additionally, the regulation of interstate commerce, even in the limited sense that it was supposedly supposed to be originally enumerated for, that is antithetical to a free market principle. Additionally, monopoly on the postal service is antithetical to the free market. Additionally, the ability to create credit on the backs of the American people, which has existed since the beginning of the United States Republic. Not since the Federal Reserve. That's
Can
Article
I
1,
add
Section
one
8.
more? And you've touched on this before. Article 1, Section 9, Paragraph 2. I don't have it in front of me. Essentially is the blueprint for the NDAA.
Yeah, so if you're for the free market, there's much against the free market in the Constitution. If you're for individual liberty and people's right to live their life according to their own ends, then there's also stuff against that in the Constitution, like Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2, which essentially is the indefinite detention clause. However, the authority is given to the Congress. It says the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless in times
the big word, unless.
Insurrection or rebellion, it says, and threats to public safety.
Yeah, so who gets to define what rebellion is? Who gets to define what, what's the other word? I'm looking it up here.
Insurrection or invasion?
Invasion, yeah, invasion. Who gets to define what invasion is?
So the difference between the NDAA, indefinite detention authorization, and what already exists within the U.S. Constitution is simply the President has the authority with the NDAA, whereas the Congress has the authority, which they've exercised before. And then also, if you're for individual liberty, it's kind of difficult to also be for the Constitution, because Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 gives the newly formed central government the authority to tax the entire body politic, everybody that exists within the geographic area known as America at the time. Those that drafted the Constitution at the Constitutional Convention, which were mostly public creditors and attorneys. Not that there's anything against attorneys. Maybe there might be a little something against public creditors, but those were the individuals that drafted the Constitution, and in many ways they drafted it in a form to protect their position of privilege. And they drafted it, and they gave themselves the authority to not only tax the entire of everybody that existed. And remember before, 90% of those people that they're now taxing, well, I guess you can't tax someone that doesn't own property or that doesn't put money into the system or doesn't have a means to tax. Oh, that's not true, actually, because there were peaceful people like the whiskey rebels that were taxed for just simply brewing whiskey in the mountains of Appalachia.
Yeah, and who took them down?
Yeah, and then the hero George Washington called up the militia, which is constitutional, Article 1, Section 8 again, called up the militia to squash the quote-unquote whiskey rebellion, which was just peaceful mountain men that were brewing whiskey and using it as a currency. But, yeah, the taxing authority, giving the authority to tax so many people to such a small group of people that have power over such a large geographic area is a really bad idea. And if I were alive at the time, I would have lobbied for my state legislature. See, it wasn't even the state legislatures that adopted the U.S. Constitution. It was constitutional conventions in the state that were called by a lot of elitist cliques. It wasn't the people that adopted the Constitution. It was the privileged few that adopted the U.S. Constitution. And since its adoption, they've been using it to benefit themselves at the expense of everyone else.
No, John, if we just get back to the Constitution, stop being like that. What's the matter with you? Go drink a beer.
Drink a beer. You crazy rabble-rouser. Yeah, but even if we did get back to the Constitution, who's to say that we're not simply going to wind up in the same spot that we are today?
Well, of course. And we would. Most definitely. That obviously happened. All right. Hey, I want to give a big old plug how am I going to do this? I'll be honest with you, I haven't even figured out how we're going to do this. Right in front of my lovely eyes are 10 autographed. Maybe y'all have heard of this guy, Adam versus the Man. I think did he change his last name to Versus the Man yet? he had teased about it.
That's funny.
No, I bought some T-shirts from Adam or the Adam store or whatever, and they're all autographed. And I'll be honest with you, I'm just how are we going to market these? Give incentive for people to. That reminds me, we've got some people here in a live audience. And we're seeking donations as well. But if you go to libertymovementradio.com, there used to be that little pharmaceutical-looking pill that said donate. It's no longer there. I pulled out my magic fairy wand, and it's been replaced temporarily by a chip-in. And it's I'm raising. Well, it says it's we. It just says I'm $4,200 for broadcasting of the New York 420 event and other related costs. So if you would I'd be much obliged. Head over that direction. And it's not just me; it's all the radio dudes here on LibertyMovementRadio.com. It'll certainly help us out, help Antonio out, help me out, help all the people that are putting the Anarchy in the NYC event, Ian Chaffee and others. Or is it just he? Is he solo on that one? On this one?
I don't know.
Oh, well.
Somebody's putting it on.
No, it certainly helped. But like I said at the beginning, if you would have normally gone to the event, it's just simply too far away. Would you have been, it would have been worth your Federal Reserve note, your $10, $15, $20 FRNs, your $10, $15, $20, but you're going to get to listen to it. So via Liberty Movement Radio. So, chip in $5, $10, $15. Maybe we'll find that golden gem person, that dude, that chick out there with the. I'm still convinced that there are 0 millionaire libertarians.
I know a millionaire libertarian.
You do? Okay.
And I worked for him.
Worked or work?
Worked.
Okay. Well, maybe that $1 million libertarian will just chip in a little bit.
Let's give him a call.
Yeah, give him a call. I mean, I've often said this. If you're not giving to the point where it hurts a little bit, you're probably not giving enough. I have a disease. I give away too much. And arguably it's cost me relationships. It's caused me a lot of heartache because I'm so obsessed with the message of freedom. I do Liberty Fest West, and then I fly to Paul Stock in Georgia, and then we fly down to the RNC for Paul Festival, and then fly to New York for Liberty Fest 3.
And you drove your Dodge Viper truck to Liberty Fest 3.
Viper trucked it 10 miles a gallon, and that thing's for sale, by the way. I'm not going to be able to maintain that gas guzzler at the moment, but it is fun. I will have to admit I'm going to miss being able to just go to the winding roads. You got these little slow things that I can just zip past them. But yeah, I've driven down here 2 or 3 times now, and I'm just my disease is I give away too much, and I'm going to have to quit it because I've got children to feed and all that good stuff. So yeah, so go to LibertyMovementRadio.com and help out a moron on the radio who knows how to raise kids, fix engines, and run his mouth, and that's about it.
That's about it. Raise kids, fix engines, and we'll see how he does at raising money. So go to LibertyMovementRadio.com, hit the chip-in button, and give us your money. It's going to a good cause. Sending Antonio Beeler, yes, the capital T-H-E, Antonio Bueller. Beeler.
I think it's Bueller.
He likes it when you say Bueller.
He says Bueller.
He prefers Anthony Bueller. Yes.
Antoine.
I'm going to get the wrath of Bueller. Everybody thinks he's a nice guy, but you should see him when he's angry.
Yeah, I bet he's got a mean backhand.
So should we bring one of these guests we have here in the audience? We got Antonio Beeler.
You got a mic?
And or Heather Fazio.
Yeah. Who wants to ante up on this one? Do you have the mic?
Should we go ahead and bring Beeler up? I think we have the mic about ready. We'll have to do a little test here, but we should have the mic about ready. Yeah. So, without further ado.
Yeah, Antonio, please come up. Let's give
Antonio
a big old hand.
Dun-dun-dun, 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 dun-dun-dun. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Yeah. So.
That was lovely.
Yeah. Take it away, Caleb.
Mr. Antonio Beeler. How are you, brother? Let's give a sound test.
Should I be able to hear you on my headphones?
No, you shouldn't be able to hear us, but we should be able to hear you. If you'll keep talking for me, please, sir. Antonio Beeler.
I can keep talking.
Keep talking, Peaceful Streets. Hey, what are you speaking of, Peaceful Streets? What do you think of my new duds I'm sporting here?
It looks great.
They look good in
Everyone
red.
looks more attractive with the Peaceful Street shirt.
I look. He's telling me I look smoking hot. Is what he's saying in this red Peaceful Streets project. Yeah, they got them down here. Brave New Books for you local Austinite dudes.
That's Brave New Books, 1904 Guadalupe Street, 512-480-2503, BraveNewBookstore.com.
I would have swore that was pre-recorded. He did that on the fly.
Been doing it since 2007 now.
I'll never be that good. Ever.
So, Antonio, what's on your mind today?
Liberty.
Liberty's often on your mind, as I can see. So, for those of you listening out there who've been hiding under a stone or maybe in a cage for a victimless crime, tell us, Antonio, who's the real Antonio Beeler? What's going on, Antonio? How did you get involved with the Peaceful Streets Project? What spurred you to dedicate your life to filming police in the course of their duties to prevent them from harming other people? Why are you so dedicated to police accountability?
Well, like a lot of people who are involved in police accountability type actions, I was the victim of police abuse. So on New Year's Day 2012, a little bit over a year ago, I was a designated driver driving home a friend, and we were running out of gas, and we stopped at a convenience store on the west side of Austin, and we started to observe a DUI stop in progress. And during this stop, right before we were about to leave, one of the cops ended up yanking the female passenger out of the car and throwing her to the ground. She had committed no crime, and that was clearly evident to us. And then the other cop joined in. They put her into a torture move, twisting her arms behind her back, up in the air. They cuffed her and took her back towards the back squad car. But while they were doing this, I reached for my camera and started to take pictures. So did my friend. And we had never done anything like that before. We had never gone cop watching before. And we just saw it happening, so we decided to try to take pictures. And while we were taking pictures, the female passenger saw us and started begging us to record what was happening. So then I started yelling at the cops, asking them why they were hurting her and telling them to stop hurting her. And that resulted in one of the cops, Patrick Oborski, coming after me, pushing me around, and then ultimately charging me with a felony for allegedly spitting in his face. And that's how it all began for me.
Well, it began a little bit before then, right? You were a Ron Paul activist.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were talking about specifically for the police abuse stuff.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, so I sort of had my philosophical awakening back in 2009, and I went over the deep end on liberty, and that manifested itself into me spending a lot of time trying to help people leave the public education system, help their kids get a better alternative for education through homeschooling or other alternative means. And then I became very active in the Ron Paul Revolution, and I was doing that pretty actively up until, even beyond what happened to me on New Year's Day, and then I picked up the police accountability as well.
So now you're for police accountability. Before that, you were for Ron Paul and freedom. And before that, you were for bombing brown people.
Yeah.
Don't feel bad.
I'm still for peace and liberty, anyways. But yeah, so I think that a lot of people, very few people, are fortunate enough to grow up in a household where the ideals of liberty are expressed and where the morality conversations are had around the dinner table, where they talk about things like violence is bad, stealing is bad, murder is bad. It seems that most people in society can generally agree with those themes, but there's always caveats. It's, killing is bad unless the government does it in order to protect us from people that scare us. Mm-hmm. Or stealing is bad unless the government does it so that they can go ahead and give money to people who are hurting, as opposed to just allowing people to give their own money to them.
So how were you turned on to the Good Doctor, which Dr. Ron Paul turned you on to libertarianism, right?
Yeah, it was a pretty fast process for me. So I was actually a John McCain supporter in 2008. I would not say I was a hardcore Republican, but I always voted Republican. I never voted for a Democrat. And I saw John McCain as sort of this moderate. I know that he was called the Maverick. He was a Naval Academy graduate, and I had this silly loyalty to the academies because I had gone to West Point. And so I supported him, and it was after the election, after he lost to Obama, that I was pretty torn, pretty upset because I knew Obama was this terrible guy who was going to bring socialism to this country and destroy the economy and let the terrorists win whatever they were trying to win. Mm-hmm. And I just, in my depression, took a step back, started watching Obama videos, thinking, maybe he won't be so bad. Mm-hmm. And then he started breaking his promises pretty much on the night of the election. And that ultimately led me to watch Ron Paul videos. And then Ron Paul, just a lot of things made sense, and things started to click. At the same time, I was getting back into Ayn Rand, starting to read The Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged. Atlas Shrugged was what really hit me. And then I started reading libertarian books in general, and it was just a very, very fast process. By the time that I would say inauguration came around, I was pretty much done. I had come around, and I knew that liberty and peace were things that really mattered to me, and I was never going to sort of go back to just supporting one team or the other because I thought that I would be better off if I just supported a team that won.
That's great. I usually give politicians and the political world and running for office a hard time. But, Caleb was turned on to the philosophy of liberty in large part through Deborah Medina, a candidate for political office. You were turned on to the philosophy of liberty in large part through Ron Paul, a candidate for political office. Deborah Medina was catapulted because of Ron Paul. I was turned on to Ron Paul back in 2007, which introduced me to libertarianism. Before I was, more like a 9/11 Truth anti-New World Order activist, restore the Republic. But there's always that educational purpose, and it's great to see, and I'm always so curious about people's stories about how they were turned on to the philosophy of liberty, because it seems like there's so many people that just walk around mindlessly that aren't capable of snapping out of that zombie state of believing that other people should have authority over their lives. So it's always interesting to me to hear how people get turned on to freedom, and a lot of people get turned on through the good old doctor. To the doctor.
To the doctor.
To the doctor. Cheers. Except I'm out, but I'll cheers to that.
What do you think, Caleb?
You haven't always been the libertarian you are, the anarchist you are now, John. I know you've got some status baggage, and you've got to have some status baggage, at least like as a child somewhere. Come on. Come on. I've heard the stories about Lincoln.
Well, back in 2004, I did have a John Kerry bumper sticker on my car.
Okay.
I was a bit of a Democrat.
Not pointing fingers. I'm just saying.
Well, I was turned on to 9/11 Truth in 2002, and that was when I started to become politically aware. So instantly off the bat, I was a hardcore skeptic, but I fell into the trap of thinking that because I'm against the war, I'm against George Bush, and because I'm against George Bush, I must be a Democrat.
Right.
But then in 2006, when Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats took control of the House and the Senate, promising to end the war, and then they only escalated the war, it was at that point that I began to see through the left-right paradigm.
Right.
But yeah, everybody has their process. Everybody has their evolution. Some people take a slower pace. Some people take a larger pace. Some people need to hear Alex Jones going crazy on Piers Morgan to snap out of their trance. Some people need to hear a reasonably sounding, articulate, old 75-year-old man at a debate against John McCain to snap out of the trance. But some people need to stumble upon brave new books by hearing about it on 90.1 or seeing an ad in the paper and come on down here.
Or watch a very large man get thrown to a hood of a car and taken down like some hardened criminal. Which one did it? Oborski or Snyder?
Oborski, yeah.
Oborski is the one.
Snyder joined in pretty quickly. So Snyder's the one who started the attack on Norma, the female passenger, and Oborski joined in, and then Snara returned the favor by jumping in on me after Oborski went after me.
By the way, I did get your Christmas card. And
nice.
Thank you so much. That was one of the coolest the Christmas card I've ever. Here's a picture of Antonio laid out, and my kids even said, "What's that man doing laying down there?" I said, "Those cops have got him pinned to the ground." They said, "Oh," and my kids know who you are. Yeah, you're like a little local celebrity in my neck of the woods. So.
Well, speaking of Patrick Oborski, I think Caleb Leverett has an award to give to old Patrick.
Yeah, the Caleb Leverett, that's a good idea. Yeah, pull out that douchebag of the day award.
The douchebag of the day.
Yes, that's right. Mr. Oborski. Officer Oborski, the douchebag. This is his second time. Now, that's not even fair, man. He's
A two-time douchebag.
Yeah, he's got a record already. I mean, that's a record on the Caleb Leverett Show. We've never given it away 2 times.
Tell us about Officer Patrick Oborski. He's the officer that arrested you and falsely charged you with felony harassment of a public official, which could wind up with a minimum of 2 years in jail. I face Class C misdemeanors all the time. I got 2 Class C misdemeanors coming up at the end of January, and it's like, yeah, whatever. I'm going to defend myself. If I'm found guilty, I'll just do community service. I'm not going to pay their fine, blah, blah, blah. But you're looking at a minimum of 2 years in jail. That would probably be a state jail, right? Because it's a state jail felony. Tell us about Patrick Oborski. I mean, what kind of person just willy-nilly is willing to destroy someone's life like that? What's this guy like?
Well, first and foremost, he's a cop. So that, unfortunately, gives you a good insight into who he might be as a person, because the institution of law enforcement is corrupt. And there is no cop in the country today who can really fight back against the police officers union and the system that's set up to victimize the people. But Oborski specifically is a really interesting fellow. He is one of the top DUI cops in the nation. He might even be the top one. They call him the Machine or the Shark. He had over 300 DUI arrests last year, in the year that ended with his arrest on me. He won the MAD award that year for here in Texas, and then this year the MAD gave him their national award. Art Acevedo gave him the Jaime Padron Award, a Hero Award, and that is essentially the award. Jaime Padron was an officer that was killed in the line of duty here in Austin, Texas, and Art Acevedo, in a very disgraceful, pathetic move, decided to honor that guy's memory by giving a Hero Award to one of the worst cops on the force. And this is a guy who, despite only being on the force for slightly over 10 years, has made, on average, something like $125,000 or $130,000 a year over the past 3 years. This is a public servant, who is supposed to be working for us. And through his many, many DUI arrests, we've heard numerous stories of abuse, of people who don't believe that they should have been abused, people who say that they were sober, people who ended up winning their court cases. Disproportionately, they're women, young women, who are being abused by him. A lot of inappropriate touching, a lot of violent type of movements and stuff. And it seems that because he's such a revenue generator for the city of Austin, that he's been given a green light by the chain of command, that he's allowed to engage in these activities, because apparently getting a lot of arrests and winning these awards and bringing money into the system can justify, as someone said on a comment in a news article recently, that you can't have a low-crime omelet without breaking a few eggs. That sort of mentality. It's okay to trample on people's rights and to injure people and harm people if you can put the fear of God into people as far as what the police force is, and to extract money out of them.
In the name of public safety.
And they are keeping you safe, are they not?
I feel safe every time I get pulled over.
I feel safe.
There's an armed man there. He can protect us from criminals, private criminals,
That's
a public
right.
criminal
Serve
protecting you from a private criminal.
Protect the shit out of you. That's right.
Yeah, pretty bad.
So, how did you get in? I guess did Ian contact you about speaking at the 420 event in New York City? How did you get a hold of it? Or what's Ian Chaffee? You're speaking.
I think that John or Kat.
They pushed it. Okay, well,
it was Catherine Bleish, the Catherine Bleish, my lovely fiance. She sets up all of my speaking engagements.
Okay.
She got this crazy harebrained. How do you say that? Is that harebrained idea?
Harebrained.
What does that even mean? I don't know why I said it. I don't even know what it means.
No, harebrained.
Give me another beer. So this crazy harebrained idea that she ought to try to start getting Antonio Beeler and Scott Crow, who's a left anarchist, doesn't really speak at Liberty events, onto the national speaking circuit. Of course, Antonio Beeler's our local hero here with one heck of a nationwide following.
Right.
But you haven't really been to speak at too many of the nationwide conferences or like the Liberty Fest West. So Kat wants to break Antonio out, get that, because everybody's foaming at the mouth for Antonio. They love the guy because he's standing up in a major way against the establishment. So we want to get Antonio out to speak to all these other crowds and encourage them and give them motivation to get out there and film the police. Give them courage, too. I think one of the things that Antonio is so special for is because he makes people less afraid and more brave to stand up to the man, because it's scary.
I was watching one of your live streams. You do these, I'll let you explain it, these live stream deals where you got a live stream camera, you just drive around and follow cops and film them. And I watched one, I think, 2 weeks ago. And I remembered it because I had my kids, and I'd already put them to bed, and I wasn't tired, so I just, you'd posted, we're live streaming, so I watched it. And this cop that was pulling over this person, they were doing a field sobriety test, and this other cop person just came up as you were approaching him. She said, "Sir, I need you to stand over here." And you said, "No, I'm fine. I'm just going to stand right here and film." And she just went, "Okay." It was hilarious. I would have never thought to just, say, "No, I'm perfectly fine right here." And that, just watching you do that sort of thing, I learned from it. And I have a feeling New York City, Danny Penzel in particular, he would love to get a load of you and just go around and just watch how you handle this thing. So talk about your
Talk about your big balls, Antonio.
Yeah, we want to stroke your big ball, not your ego. That was about your live stream deal.
Well, so when we were doing the
I've got a man crush on you, by the way. I made it very clear over the last
Both of us have a man crush on Antonio.
I won't tell you guys who I have a man crush on. Anyways, so
Tom McCain.
Yeah. Well, when we were doing Peaceful Streets, and there's a great team of people here in Austin who do the Peaceful Streets, it's definitely not just me. In fact, John Bush has been integral member of the team from day one. But we were looking at different ways that we could really push forward with this attempt to try to change the culture and change the way people look at police and the way that they are willing to interact with police. And one of the things that we decided to do is to do what a lot of the people have done with Cop Watch and Cop Block, go out and film police. That was one of the tactics we wanted to employ. And at the very beginning, it was very aggressive. Dealing with the police were very aggressive with us. And they did not like being filmed. Surprise, surprise. And they came after us, and they ended up arresting me twice. They ended up arresting one of our volunteers, Lynn Foster, once. They ended up arresting Sarah Dickerson once, who was actually filming them, me getting arrested. Then they turned around and arrested her. They arrested Joshua Pineda, another one of our very active volunteers who got arrested. And every single time they arrested one of us, it brought bad press to them. It rallied the troops for us. It made them look terrible online because we immediately disseminated the information. Videos, they have confiscated 4 of our cameras, so we couldn't share those, but the other videos. And through the process of that, they've become a lot more respectful, and they don't attack us anymore. So it's a little bit easier for us to really stand up to them and not back down to them. But it is a risk every time you go out there. You never know what kind of hot-headed, pumped up on steroids type cop you might come across who doesn't care about your liberties and will arrest you regardless.
Yeah, we were all down in Tampa at the Tampa house, and we anticipated you being there, and we were all heading to. I think it was maybe the Veterans March or Adam House's deal, I believe. We all looked up, and kind of at the same time. Hey, I thought Antonio was supposed to be here. Where is he? So we all got on our iPhone. Oh, holy shit, Antonio got arrested again. That's why he's not here. And I've always admired that about you. The first thing you do when you get arrested, you spend the night at the pokey, you come out the next day, talk to the press, say, yo, here's what happened. And in full form, in your humble way, you just tell what happened, and then the very same night you go do the same damn thing over and over and over. And I just admire that about you. So thank you for doing what you do. And I mean that sincerely. I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. I genuinely appreciate that.
Well, and again, that's just because we have a lot of really awesome activists here in Austin, Texas, and a lot of people who rally behind me every single time that I get arrested. And we're really fortunate. And when I was trying to decide where to move, one of the reasons I chose Austin, Texas was because of all the great activists here, and it seemed like a community that really went to bat for one another. And I've learned that, I guess, the hard way. I've learned that's absolutely true, and I've been very, very blessed in that regard. And I would like to see that happen all across the country, where the sad fact of the matter is that most people who are abused or victimized by the cops, it's the cops' word against yours. You're in jail, so you can't share your story. The cops go out, they create the narrative. It's usually a lie. You end up spending thousands of dollars just to try to preserve your freedom and liberty. Meanwhile, they're slandering you the entire time. The media picks up on what they're saying. They don't care about what your side of the story is. And most people don't have a community of people who are willing to back them. And so hopefully through our efforts, we can build those communities and we can break down this false notion that cops, the institution, that it is filled with honorable people who are there to protect and serve you. It's quite the opposite. And if we can get people to realize that cops are criminals, that cops are cowards, not all of them, but
I was gonna say not all,
but as an institution,
right.
You know, if you want to use generalizations, that's not a bad one to go with.
Right.
That if people understand that and realize that, then people who come out of prison, the innocent victims of police misconduct and violence, they can get back to living a normal life. They still have to deal with the court system, but at least they don't have to deal with this perception that they are automatically a bad person just because they had been victimized by a cop.
Smash the system. He was born to rage against him, this guy. So, Antonio Beeler of PeacefulStreetsProject.com, tell us what is in store for the Peaceful Streets Project for 2013.
There's a lot of stuff in store. We are definitely going to step it up. The activism here is going to get a little bit more complicated.
Complicated. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, we did a great job last year. The summit was amazing. We had a summit in July where we handed out 100 video cameras to people who couldn't get cameras to go out and videotape police. We've had a bunch of Know Your Rights trainings. We record stories of police abuse from victims, and we went out and did a lot of cop watching. But this year, we're going to step it up. We're going to do more of an information campaign. We're going to work harder to expose the criminal actions of specific cops to help deter criminal cops from acting on their impulses because they don't want to be ostracized from their community. I think it's a good idea to go ahead and work on that ostracizing of those criminal cops. But we're also going national. So Houston is doing an amazing job. The Peaceful Streets team down in Houston, led by Derek Rose and a couple others, they have been extremely active doing cop watches and Know Your Rights trainings. And then Dallas, there's just a great team up in Dallas that's doing work. So we're going to try to do a lot of joint efforts. But then there's people from across the country who are looking to launch new chapters. We're working in concert with the guys at copblock.org who are amazing. And
Crazy anarchists.
And we think that we're going to create a real movement in this country, a social movement, one that does not rely on the government coming in and trying to protect us, but one that exposes the government for what they are. And hopefully, through this process, we really can change culture, and people will stop automatically giving respect and authority to the cops just because they demand it.
Tell us, Antonio, what's it going to take to actually create this culture change you speak of? Because the way I see things, and maybe I'm just being a grumpy, pessimistic old man here, is that the American public, for the most part, is already so obedient to authority, so mindless, so subservient that they don't even question law enforcement. And you were there during one of my trials against the charge of failure to obey an officer, Officer Jason Mistrick, badge number 4856, a.k.a. Max Rock. He, this guy went so far as to make a fake Facebook account called Max Rock and trolled Heather and my fiancée, Catherine Bleish, fishing for information about me and about them and about our local movement. Then, if that wasn't enough, during one of the court hearings, he drops a little folded-up piece of paper next to Catherine of Facebook comments about him to try to send the message that he's watching us. You better be scared. And if the testimony that he told in court was true, he was the one that was actually scared. Either that or he's a really good actor. But what I was getting at was my jury pool during voir dire, the jury selection. My attorney asked them, I wish I would have represented myself for the record. Not that my attorney's not a good guy or a good attorney, but I digress. My attorney asked the jury pool, raise your hand, because I was charged with failure to obey an officer. He asked the jury pool, raise your hand if you believe officers have the authority to order you to sit down on the ground out of nowhere. And people are like, well, I mean, yeah, he probably has a good reason. You know, what if there's a riot or something? He asks a few more questions along these lines. He goes so far as to ask, raise your hand if you think a police officer has the authority to order you to stop holding the hand of your significant other. And people raised their hand, and one guy said, well, you don't know if there's a weapon in your hand or whatnot. I think we're about to come up on a break here. Yep. We're coming up on a break, but on the flip side, I'd like for you to tell us what is different about what you guys are doing that's going to make the change. Because a lot of people have been pushing for police accountability for decades now, and I can't think of a police department that I know of that's actually accountable to the people. So we want to hear from you what you think is going to make the difference. How is Peaceful Streets Project different from what's already going on, and what are you guys going to do to stop this epidemic of police abuse? We think that they're playing commercials. They might be. We don't know.
It's just awkward.
We're not privy to that kind of stuff.
Let me ask him real quick.
They could be listening to us having this conversation right now.
That actually makes it more interesting, right?
I mean, this is grassroots radio right here. We don't know if we're on the air. We don't know if we're off the air. This is classic libertarian online radio.
We're being recorded and listened to, so let's talk about some really kinky shit. Hey, on my
Here
show,
comes trouble. Crank my cat.
As the beers flow, that's when it really starts getting interesting.
That's why we brought Antonio Bieler on.
The sober guy?
The sober guy.
sober guy.
So we can seduce him with our intellect. Bring this guy a beer. So we're either on the air or we're not. Either way, let's keep it awkward.
Keep it weird.
Keep it weird. Hey, I want to get one of those. Keep Austin weird.
Oh, they're everywhere for sale down on 6th Street. When we go cop watching, you can go grab one.
All right. So
When are you going to go cop watching, Caleb?
I'm looking for the sign up sheet. I want the sign up sheet. When, where, Thursday. I don't know if I'll be here Thursday, but
Maybe we should go after the Jordan Page show. Isn't it a good idea to get wasted and go cop watching?
That's great.
okay, we have been live this whole time. I shit you not.
We're live this whole time.
Yeah, he just said. Not right there.
All right, so if they're not taking a break, then we'll return to our regular scheduled programming.
Yeah, but I'm just going to we'll just keep going anyway.
So, Bieler, tell us, what is different about Peaceful Streets Project that's actually going to make a difference? Because, as I said before, a lot of people have been banging their heads against the wall. A lot of people have been going to city councils. A lot of people have been protesting, rallying, you name it, doing community organizing, and still cops get away with murder literally, even in the great liberal utopia, progressive utopia of Austin, Texas. What's up with this Peaceful Streets Project? Are you guys just going to continue to bang your heads against the wall, or you guys got something magic going on?
Well, I think we have something magical going on. And it's not just us, but it's essentially the fact that the people, even though it seems like a lot of people are asleep and that people just don't care and that they just bow down to authority, people are becoming more and more aware of how criminal and how violent some of these police are. And that's due in large part to the proliferation of cameras. And so people are seeing a lot more of it. The Rodney King thing really started it, and then it's just really amped up since then. And so more and more people are becoming aware of it. But what's interesting about the Peaceful Streets Project and my incident on New Year's Day in general was I am not black or Hispanic, for people who don't know what I look like. I had never been arrested before. I've never had issues with the police before. I graduated from West Point and Stanford. So I've been a volunteer. I'm a teacher. So there's a lot of things about me that that don't fit into the general stereotypes that people have about people who have issues with police abuse. And far too often, people are willing to dismiss stories of police abuse because they say, oh, well, the guy was drunk, or he was high, or oh,
he was black.
He's black, or look at those tattoos, or he was arrested for having possession of marijuana charge back in 2008, so therefore you can't trust the guy. And they didn't have
a Ron Paul bumper sticker.
Well, yeah, not okay. So that one might get you somewhere. But the fact is that people just weren't willing to buy in as quickly to the notion that I was somehow the type of person who would do something like this. And that, in addition to the fact that we had a half dozen witnesses step forward to say the cops lied, and we had video to prove that the cop lied, allowed people to say, okay, wait a second, something's wrong here. Mm-hmm. Whereas most of the time, they just turn a blind eye to the abuses of the police. So that is, I think, a really big thing. Another thing is, when we launched the Peaceful Streets Project, we made it very clear that we were not going to engage in political activity. We were going to stay focused on culture change, enabling people to stand up for themselves and to protect and serve each other, and we weren't going to beg the government to treat us nicer. And we decided to make sure that we stayed non-political. So we weren't going to endorse candidates. We weren't going to endorse a political party, because that ultimately tears movements apart. Because as soon as we came out and said, well, we support this guy or this guy, whether Democrat or Republican, we just lost nearly half of the people who would support us.
That's right. It's a broad-based, diverse political ideologies, peaceful streets, right?
Yeah, and so I think that we can do a very good job of exposing the police force and the tactics that they use and their history for what they are. And it does seem daunting, but if we look at the fact that slavery was once accepted as a norm and people saw nothing wrong with it, the fact that people used to think that it was okay to set stones on people to kill them as to get them to confess, things like this, much bigger social transformations have taken place in the past. And so, yes, people have been pounding their head against the wall for hundreds of years, but I think that we're at a critical juncture in history when people are finally waking up to the idea that no one should have the right to kill you or to abuse you just because they are in a position of authority as deemed by the government. And I think that we don't need everyone to believe it. We just need a significant minority to believe it, and then we can tear down the institution and look for better voluntary ways of dealing with our problems.
Yeah, like the back of this T-shirt that I'm wearing, where the front says Peaceful Streets, the back says serve and protect each other.
Protect and serve each other, that's right.
Protect and serve each other. I like that. Who came up with that? Was that you?
No, Michael Goldstein.
Is
that his name? Michael Gold?
Each other. Protect and serve each other. I like that.
He's a student at University of Texas, member of the Libertarian Longhorns, and he's actually created our website, and he just came up with that because he needed something to fill in underneath the logo, and it just stuck.
Yeah, kind of like all you crazy cats, just schmohawk stuck. I understand how things get stuck. They just stick. If you like it, you like it. So,
I have a question that might be kind of controversial.
You be controversial? Nah, no way. You're always like right down the line.
It was actually
Be controversial.
It was actually a question posed by Larkin Rose, who's an anarchist liberty philosopher.
Who will also be at the 420 event.
At the 420 event that we're raising money for to get Antonio Beeler out there to speak to New York City. If you want to donate, go to libertymovementradio.com and give to the chip-in. As little as $5 will help, but if you give us $500, we'll love you forever. So here's the question. He wrote an article called When You Should Shoot a Cop. Maybe it was When Should You Shoot a Cop? And just the headline makes people shudder. And in fact, that headline, that somebody placed that article at Occupy Phoenix. They just went to the Occupy, the camp out, and like placed the article everywhere. And the Fusion Center picked it up, and like all the police made a big hubbub. There was even a Republican Party like chairman in Florida or something that posted it on his Facebook and like got dethroned from the Republican Party. But the article essentially explores the idea of when, if ever, would it be appropriate to shoot a police officer. And I think it's a question that's at least worth exploring, if not in a public arena like this one, that people should at least think about it in their own head. And for me, it relates also to a YouTube video that Michael Badnarik did way back in the day at one of his Constitution classes, where he makes the point that it's important for individuals to draw a line in the sand and to know where that line is and what activity, what action would constitute a crossing that line. You don't have to tell anyone. And I would, in fact, recommend not telling anyone or putting it in public or posting it on Facebook, but know where your line is, because when that line gets crossed, the last thing you want to do is take another step back and have the line be drawn further, because as Michael Badnarik pointed out in this YouTube video, it's only a matter of time before you're backed all the way up against a train to Auschwitz. So, I mean, we could pose that question, like, why do you think it is that the public is so subservient to where the idea of preventing a police officer from killing someone else by shooting the police officer is so taboo that it's not even discussed, and when it is discussed, people are up in arms. And one of the situations that's come to my head, and I'll get you guys input on this, is there was a story I heard in California where a police officer drowned a man to death. The man was handcuffed with his hands behind his back. His face was in the grass in the front yard, and the police officer was pouring water from a hose on his face, and the man drowned to death. And so I played, in my thoughts, like if I was standing there, would I just watch that? Would I stand idly by and watch it? Would I try to drop kick the officer? What would I do in that position? I think it's something that we should rationally explore, because society seems to think that if you have a badge on your shirt, then you're infallible, and the last thing we want to do is touch someone. And for self-preservation, it's not such a good idea to use force against a police officer, because of the way the culture is now. I mean, are we hoping to change the culture to where when people start standing up for themselves, even if it means using resistance, physical resistance, the public will be like, that's right, you should stand up for yourself? I mean, what are y'all's thoughts on that?
Well, the Peaceful Streets is a nonviolent movement, and I believe in nonviolence. I don't believe in initiating force against people, but I do believe in self-defense, and I do believe in defending our people. And so I think this is definitely a good question to ask yourself. I think this is a thought exercise everyone should go through, because if you say that you should never initiate force against police, then if a cop
respond to force,
right? Well, if a cop has a bunch of people lined up, laying on their knees, and he's shooting them in the back of the head like they do in Mexico, do you still not do anything? Is that a time that you just sit there and record and file a report to the OPM, Office of the Police Monitor? I think that's absolutely not the case. You should be able to do it. But the problem is, we as a society, we worship authority. We are conditioned to worship authority through public education and through our, just our families and the nationalism that's always pushed upon us. Mm-hmm. And the Milgram experiment has highlighted how people are very obedient to anyone that they deem is of authority. So I think
Tell us about that experiment real quick, if you would.
Milgram experiment was, if I recall correctly, essentially they brought people into a room, and if I get this wrong, I'm sorry, but this is just going off the top of my head. They brought people into a room, they sat them down at a switchboard, essentially, and they were told that there was someone on the other side of the room, another volunteer, and this was chosen just by taking paper out of a hat, and it was very random. And they were being told to increase the electric current of a shock to get people to do certain tasks. the person in the other room was actually an actor. They didn't know this. And the dial that they were using wasn't actually sending electricity. But there was a person in the room who was standing behind the person, and they had to keep applying these electric shocks every single time the person did something wrong. It wasn't in line with what they were supposed to be doing with the experiment. And they were supposed to gradually increase the electric shock. And it got to a point where the actor in the other room started screaming violently, "Please stop, get me out of here, this hurts, I can't take it anymore." And most people kept going. And at the point that a lot of people were like, whoa, something's wrong, I don't know that I should be doing this, the person of authority, the guy in the white lab coat, would say, "No, keep going. You need to keep going." And I believe it was something like 1/3 of the people who went through this experiment pegged out the electric shock. And that meant increasing the electric shocks long after the actor completely went silent, i.e., the guy was incapacitated, he was dead or just completely knocked out. And 1/3 of the people would actually peg it out, essentially killing the guy. And they would do it, and their answer when asked about it after the study was essentially, "Well, I was told to." Just like the Nazis said, just like people have done throughout history. And so it's a real problem that we have as a human species where we do bow down to authority. But I think that through the work of so many activists and through pushing the philosophy of anarchism, the belief that other people shouldn't have the right to rule over you and own you as a person, that we can go ahead and break that down a little bit, break down these power structures, and try to help prevent some of these terrible abuses that happen. Because when we look at the history of the world, the two greatest killers, as far as like murders go, have been governments and religion has been a murderer when it manifests itself as a government, such as the Catholic Church did in Europe, and such as a lot of the Muslim extremists are essentially, they're governments now, either locally or nationally in North Africa, South Asia, and the Middle East.
What do you think, Caleb?
I'm still shocked about your that study you did with the actor. That's really disturbing, though it's not shocking. It seems like
shocking, pun intended.
Yeah, pun intended. It's not shocking. It's
Are we being filmed?
no, it's not live. Well, that part's not. Would you say 30% of the people just pegged it out?
I think it was 1/3. Yeah, and it's been a while since I actually looked at it, but
I'd off the air, obviously, I want to read that or see that or
yeah, it's Milgram experiment, Milgram.
Milgram experiment. I'm going to look into that. I just completely something happened. I was messaged and I lost my train of thought. So just forgive me.
Thanks for sharing with us.
Yeah, well,
that's why we're here.
I like doing. Ben gets on to me. The Schmohawk gets on to me all the time on brutal honesty. If I lose my train of thought, I just lose my train of thought. And he gets on to me. Why not say it? Okay, I lost my train of thought. Big deal. I'm ready to get into some fun stuff, man.
Enough of this shooting cops
This
stuff.
shooting cops are the proposition, although I'll give my stance on it. That was the question you asked. Is there a time? Of course there is. I mean, we've, on a very light level, pretty much poked a whole lot of holes in the Constitution, but I, as an activist, hide behind the Constitution all the time, particularly the free speech amendments and that sort of thing. But the Second Amendment was not put in there. I say this all the time, and I get a lot of shit for it. It was, if you think that the Second Amendment was installed so that you could show how large your penis is by shooting big trophy bucks and hanging them on the wall, you're sadly mistaken. The Second Amendment was put in there by the actual libertarian end of the Founding Fathers so that people could shoot people who infringed on their rights or drowned them in their own front yard with their hands tied behind their back, regardless of whether or not they've got a blue costume on and a shiny, nice little badge. That's my take on it. I know I'm strange. I'm weird.
Yes, I think it's an important role of liberty activists to challenge the way people perceive authority, whether it's the idea that police officers are infallible and that we ought to obey their every command and that we ought to not resist and that we ought not step in and help people to resist when they're being abused, but also dispel the authority that is the modern Western medical practitioner, the allopathic medicine that everyone just says, well, my doctor said they had to cut my kidneys out or cut my ovaries out or put me on this high blood pressure medicine, so I might as well do it. Or the same thing, the dentist or the OBGYN that says, well, I'm afraid we're going to have to perform a C-section or we're going to have to go ahead and induce the child because the birth is just taking too long. It's important for people to understand as many subjects as they can, at least a base understanding, so when someone's trying to sell you a bill of goods. And I think it's even more important for people to understand that they are inherently free, that they do have free will, and they do have a right to self-determination, and that any force, individual, police department, corporation, government, or asshole down the street that would infringe upon those natural rights, they ought to be resisted. Ideally, they ought to be resisted peacefully. But I think if we're just going to sit there and watch our significant others get raped or our children be murdered, then we're no better than the tyrants that are doing it. And we're creating an environment where that type of behavior is allowed to breed. So we're not encouraging people to do anything nasty, but
of course
it is important to let those thoughts play out in your mind. Draw the freaking line.
It's quite the opposite. We're not nobody's calling for anybody to do anything nasty. In fact, it is exactly the opposite. Prevent something that is nasty. If you see a cop drowning your dad or your child in the front yard with handcuffs and whatever you said, he was pushing his hands behind his back, pushing him down the dirt, drowning him. Do something. Don't let a cop murder your child or your dad or your neighbor. If you see something, do something. I totally sounded like some statist-ass shit just then. But if you see something, seriously, do something. Well, or at least like Antonio did. I mean, he saw an abuse. He attempted to stop it. And arguably, you did stop it. They at least turned their attention to you. They started abusing you. Well, of course, yeah. But you stood up and you said something. You said, hey, you're doing something wrong, and I don't appreciate it. I'm going to say, and that's essentially what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you didn't pull a gun and kill the cop, but I'm glad you did step in. I mean, Lord knows what they'd have done to them. I mean, they look like attractive young women, and who knows what they'd have done.
Yeah, and it's tough because people who step in and try to protect their people oftentimes become victimized, and history.
They have felonies and end up in prison
or killed. History is filled with people like abolitionists. Abolitionists were killed hand over fist during slavery, and all they were trying to do was to free people, to free slaves, and so there is that risk. But I think it's important for people to know what their morals are, what their values are, and what they can stand by and allow to see go down. And a lot of people will just be very dismissive, and they'll be like, "Oh, come on, it hardly ever happens. We need cops, this and that." But we've all seen numerous videos of things that have happened just in the past 2 years of cops killing people,
like Kelly
murdering.
Thomas.
Kelly Thomas is a great example, and a bunch of people were there at the bus stop who observed it. And none of them did anything. None of them stepped in to help save Kelly Thomas. Would it have been a good idea to step in? Well, probably not if you don't want to get hurt or get thrown in jail. But they could have saved someone's life. And so that's definitely something that I think people should ask themselves and know, as you said, what the line is. By the way, the Milgram experiment, I just looked it up. It was actually 2/3 of the people went all the way to the end and allowed that to happen.
Well, and I have a feeling. How long ago was that? Was it recent?
No, it was like probably the 70s.
I've got a feeling that really intelligent, soulless bastards throughout history have probably known that fact. And that's why they invented government, because when government says something, they just know that most of the majority of people can say, okay, we'll just steal half of my income or a third of my income and pass taxes and government said it, so it must be okay.
But what about the roads? That's why I think the work of the Peaceful Streets Project, the work of Texans for Accountable Government, we're about to hear from Heather Fazio, the executive director, the work of the Kayla Leverett Show, the work of my show, the Rise Up Radio Show, and just everything we do talking to people I think is absolutely important because we need to create an environment where people perceive what's right and wrong in different ways, and people see beyond the authority and just the shiny badge. It's like it blinds people's morals to where, you know, so say Kelly Thomas is getting beaten or the guy's being drowned in your front yard. I mean, if you go freaking drop kick the police officer or tackle them, hopefully you don't get killed, but you will be charged with the felony. Yeah. But we need to work hard enough to where we can change the hearts and minds of the public to where when you go before that jury, you show them a video and you say, look, this officer was about to kill somebody. I prevented them from doing that. That's all I did. It was my instinct as a human being to protect my species from death. That's what I did. And unfortunately, the status quo, the jury might find people guilty for stuff like that. But that's why our work is tireless and why we do what we do, because we need to change that attitude so the jury will say, hell yeah, I would have done the same damn thing. But we got a long way to go. That's why you should visit peacefulstreets.com. Or libertymovementradio.com. Donate, and we'll get Beeler out there to send a similar message to this. Be that edgy.
Yeah, but, that little pill that got replaced by the chip-in is not budged. So I take a lot of shit for this. I've said for many months now, by and large, libertarians are tight asses. Well, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. There is a chip in there at libertymovementradio.com where you can go in there and just bump it off the 0% mark. I mean, just humor me. I mean, if I guess, could I whore myself out like an E-date or something? Or
yeah,
I'll whore myself out.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
We need to do it.
So what is it? Pledge $200. You get a night out with
that cheap, man. No way, no. $500.
$500. You get a night out with Caleb Leverett in New York City.
A night out, the whole night.
Oh, that depends on who's the donor.
Yeah, maybe.
$250.
Yeah, I might. If you're in Austin, I guess I could do it here, or we could do it at the 420 event.
Do what?
Go on a nice little candlelit date after the event.
Voluntary exchange.
So you heard it, folks. $300 donation, and Caleb Leverett.
I never agreed to
take you out.
I never agreed. I'm going to put you on the auction.
$500 donation.
I'd do it for $250. Yeah,
$250.
Sure, why not?
And Caleb Leverett will take you out in New York City, show you a night on the town. You heard it here, folks. Should we go ahead and bring up Heather Fazio of Texans for Accountable Government?
I'd love to bring out Heather Fazio, and I'd love for even more someone to give me a beer since you was up. So
I'll take another shine or two, and I think we'll need a chair here. We're going to keep Antonio on if he wants to hang out with us. I don't know if he has anything better to do. He seems like a pretty busy guy.
I'm here with you guys.
Are you cop blocking tonight, or cop watching? I should say. There is a difference, right?
There is a difference, and I support both.
Tell us the difference. What's the difference?
Well, cop blocking, copblock.org is a fabulous organization that was started by Ademo Freeman and Pete Eyre, I believe.
Ademo Freeman will be on the Rise Up radio show tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. on LRN.FM. Shameless plug. Sorry to interrupt.
No. They're both great people who. There's a lot of talkers out there, but then there are doers, and both Ademo and Pete are doers, and I really respect that. But cop blocking is different than cop watching. Cop watching is going out and documenting what the cops do. Cop blocking is engaging in activities to ultimately alter the behavior of the cops, and that could be as much as aggressive filming to yelling at the suspect. Or the detained person, telling them what their rights are, or yelling at the cops and calling them out and ridiculing them for what actions they're undertaking. I support both. I think that both have a lot of merit. I think that both can lead to better outcomes for us as a society, a peaceful society. And so I encourage people to do either. Of course, cop watching entails certain risk, and cop blocking most certainly entails greater risk. And I'm pretty sure that both Pete and Ademo have been arrested in the past for the stuff that they've done.
Well, that's a good breakdown on the differences between the two. Personally, for me, it's I like to do the cop blocking myself. I know that
you like the blocking part.
I like the blocking, but to be honest, ever since my little baby girl came around, I've slowed down a little bit and let the likes of Antonio Beeler and others take the lead and do the blocking. I'll be content to make a radio ad.
Well, Well, different people are at different places in their life, and some people can be more active in the activist arena. Some people need to take a more behind-the-scenes approach. I would not encourage any young black male with tattoos and prior conviction to ever go out and engage in aggressive cop watching or cop blocking. That's just suicide. And then there are people who are young, don't have financial difficulties, don't have a record, and have resources to help fight against arrest. And those people may be more willing and able to go ahead and do some of that stuff.
Yeah, and when we stand in solidarity, we can help those marginalized communities to be more brave and have more conviction, because, it is all about privilege and people's ability to afford an attorney or people's ability to get a good beat in the media. So speaking of tireless activists, not only do we have Antonio Beeler of the Peaceful Streets Project, but now we have Heather Fazio of TexansForAccountableGovernment.com. We'll go ahead and let Caleb Leverett give Heather an introduction. I know he's a big fan. We're all big fans.
No, I am a big fan. I'm just, you know me, I'm the analytical person. Does your mic work? That's what I want to make sure.
Can you hear me now?
Actually, I can't. That's why I was going to ask. Can you hear me now? Say it again.
Can you hear me now? Test.
Wait,
Test,
I don't.
test.
Where's my mic?
Hang on, we're looking for. Where's her volume one? Is this in it?
Just do the intro. Go.
How about now?
Heather Fazio of Texans for Accountable Government is the chick who is up to date, and I actually got a really, really nice lesson. I still don't quite grasp how all this, bills get going into committee and they go through blah blah blah. And anyway, she's the one who's up on this. And I just learned there's like 5,000 roughly bills that are introduced every year, which means simply more laws that we're supposed to go by.
Every 2 years, there'll be about 5,000 bills introduced.
And how many of those actually get voted on, make it out? Was it passed committee? Is that what they're called?
About half of them will become law. And hopefully the good bills that TAG will be supporting are bills that repeal laws. All a bill really is a proposed amendment to the stack of laws that we have on the books. And the kinds of bills that we want to be supporting are bills that make government more transparent, accountable, and decentralized.
I would never support any bill unless it is one that just axes another bill. But so roughly, correct me if I'm wrong, 2,500 new laws per year that just the state passes?
About.
Okay, and I know there's a whole bunch of really, really big ones on there, really nasty ones, but I've got a personal pet peeve of proposals on banning texting while driving, and you gave me some really interesting stats. How many roughly bills are introduced on the state level to ban texting while driving?
Well, so far with the 2013 legislative session here in Texas, there have been at least a dozen that have been introduced to ban texting while driving bills all throughout Texas.
A dozen bills. That is just mind-blowing to me. Why the state of Texas and its representatives even thinks it's their damn business what I say we ban putting on lipstick while driving. That's just me, but
it's for the kids.
It's always for the children. Yeah, I have actually been accused of that many times. I hate children because of my stance on not wanting to micromanage and it's just ridiculous. This is the argument I use all the time, and I will get back to this. Banning drugs supposedly was to get rid of drugs, right? And what do we still have? Drugs. Banning prostitution was supposed to get rid of prostitutes and that horrible act of being a prostitute. And what do we still have? Prostitutes. Doing the same thing, banning texting while driving is not going to help anything. It's just going to tax you more. They're going to have to hire more law enforcement to monitor more people. And guess what happens when you get pulled over? The cop says maybe he's got to meet his quota. He's going to say, hey, you were texting while driving. You say, no, I wasn't. Say, yeah, let me see your smartphone. And say, well, that Constitution thingy, Amendment 4, the guarantee of the people to be secure in their possessions and against unreasonable searches and seizures, they will seize your smartphone, take it to court, and you can trust those government workers. The state now, not just city, you could trust the state with your smartphone, with your email address and your texts and your everything else that's private and personal until you go to court, hire a lawyer, take off time from work. Just it's not going to do any good whatsoever. So.
It will, however, give them probable cause to pull you over and then possibly smell marijuana. And in Texas, we've seen how that justifies a roadside cavity search.
Yeah, the chick that got finger banged by that rotten cop. That made me sick.
Yeah, I mean, I think saying finger banged actually implies consent. This
was
okay,
and my bad. If
a
that
roadside rape that happened by people with badges, and it's disgusting.
It is disgusting.
And I am so glad to see that these women are empowered enough to stand up for themselves and take it to court so that we.
They are taking it to court.
Yeah, they've definitely are suing DPS and.
All right,
the director Steve McCraw has been defending them, but I know that this is moving forward.
And we only know it because they had the courage to step forward and sue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they have people supporting them. And the only way that we are going to be able to get these people, hold them accountable, is if the community rallies behind these people who had the balls to stand up for themselves and to proceed with judicial action.
What I'd like to know is how did they get that dash cam video so quickly? I mean, Antonio, you still don't have your dash cam video stuff, right, of what happened to you?
Right. Well, it wasn't that quickly. This wasn't recent.
Oh, is it not?
I believe it happened over a year ago, Dan.
Yeah, this happened quite a while ago.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that. I guess I just assumed once I saw the video that it just happened because that's when it made big news, and that was when the big outrage happened. Oh,
yeah, and you know, if there had been as much publicity about this before we got the dash cam, I guarantee they would have suppressed it. Mm-hmm. But it's a good thing that it came out after, and then all the rage came out now. People seeing it, being outraged in what they saw. It's just seeing those images. It just is so appalling that could actually happen in real life. I mean, it's just so hard to believe that this is real life sometimes. Mm-hmm. That people are really being violated as just so overtly on the side of the road by these people who are these people who think that this is okay? Where did they grow up? What kind of families did they live with to actually think that it's acceptable to treat another human being that way?
I'm in the same boat. I was shocked and appalled when I saw it, and I didn't know that they were actually pursuing charges. Good for them. I think they should, and I hope those cops are just. And I am not. I might be getting myself in a sticky situation. People say, "Well, you're just anti-cop." Well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm anti-monopoly cop. I'd like to have competing forces. I mean, Antonio, like as far as private individuals having at least where there's competition. I know it's a long ways from actually coming around, but cops, we say all the time, have a monopoly on the use of force, as did these cops who pulled over those ladies and stuck their hands down their pants and did whatever they did searching for pot. Maybe if there were competing institutions, they would say, like, hey, I better not behave that way because I'll get replaced because there's somebody lined up to take my job over at, ABC versus XYZ, cop enforcement. That's just me.
Well, I'm not a fan of cops in general, private cops or public cops. I mean, I think public is far worse because they have the backing of the institution. But anytime that you give anyone authority and the right to dictate whether or not someone lives or is kidnapped is troublesome to me. At the very least, the people who are going to be victimized by these people should have the option to opt into that victimization. So I think that public law enforcement is always going to be a problem. And we have DPS here, we have city police, we have ACC cops, we have Travis County sheriffs. So in a way there is competition, but they're all competing to extract money from us.
Oh, so you consider the different state, local, federal that's not really competition. I mean, surely they're all in cahoots together. You don't think?
I don't know.
John, you're the master of fusion centers. Don't they all pretty much high five each other behind the background? And
well, I believe Alex Jones put it nicely when he interviewed Heather Fazio, I guess about the TSA stuff. Essentially saying because the city of Austin on the table was a resolution to scrutinize the TSA body scanners, make them prove that they're safe. It was some pretty monumental stuff that we could have passed. It would have really made some major waves throughout the country. But the city council cowered, of course, because they didn't want to miss out on future FAA grants, millions and millions of dollars, just like the CDC. I believe that's why they don't get that's why they don't budge on the fluoride. Heather would probably agree because of the grants. It's always the damn grants. But Jones made the point that why even have cities? Why even have states? When it seems like every single governmental entity in the United States, city, county, or state alike, are all simply administrative arms of the federal government. And I tend to agree with that. I mean, the way that they've centralized authority and merged everything together, in addition to the Fusion Center, just a lot of, even the highway funds, the requirement for a driver's license comes from a federal law that was impressed upon all the states, the Department of Homeland Security, the CDC, they all comply with these centralized standards. I would say any separation of powers or any separation of jurisdictions at this point is nothing more than an illusion. Big picture-wise. I mean, of course there's differences, and you can appeal to one. And what really works is whenever these different jurisdictions and institutions start fighting against one another, like when the federal government will cut off grant money, so the state will say, oh, well, we're not going to do A, B, or C, or the state will threaten to no longer kick money up or to not enforce a particular law. Or different jurisdictions will be like Round Rock and the city of Austin will be fighting the state of Texas for more money. I guess that's not a good scenario. But
well, and what we're doing with House Bill 80, which is what Representative Simpson introduced, it's our new 2013 TSA bill. What it does is it deems what TSA has been doing to be official oppression, and Texas law enforcement is going to hold them accountable to that and actually allow people to press charges against these goons in blue gloves.
They are goons in blue gloves. I don't know if y'all, I just took a little short break. Did y'all talk about that Texas TSA bill? Tell us about it. No. Many people, of course, are familiar with what took place last session. In 2011, David Simpson drafted a bill to criminalize these unwarranted, unconstitutional grope downs. He's introduced the same bill or a similar bill. Tell us, what is it? Is it different than the previous one? What's it all about? What are the chances this time around? What's TAG doing to help out? What's going on against the TSA?
Well, the bill is incredibly similar to the one that was introduced last session. The bill is HB 80. It's been introduced in the Texas House by Representative David Simpson. He's a Tea Party Republican, I guess you could call him, out of Longview.
He's a libertarian.
He is quite libertarian.
He's like he's less than a night watchman state style libertarian.
Yeah, he is a really great man, and he's doing really great work standing up for himself. One thing that he likes to say is, that he is willing to do what's right, explain it, and let everybody else make the decision about what they're going to do. And that's what he does. And it's not incredibly popular in the Texas House often because there are a lot of establishment folks there that just kind of go along to get along, and he's not that kind of guy. But his work and his integrity are starting to rub off and are starting to really set a precedent in the Texas House. And I'm definitely proud to support him all the way. The bill he introduced, it qualifies federal agents as public servants in the Texas Code, and then says that they can be charged with official oppression for making a traveler, someone who's trying to access a publicly accessible building or public transportation, that if they require the traveler to allow the TSA agent to touch their genitals in order to access the building or public transportation, that individual that was violated can charge the TSA agent with official oppression. And that's exactly what it is. This is an individual, free-thinking human being, supposedly, taking it upon themselves to molest and violate travelers in order to access travel, in order to access planes. And it's not something that should be, that should be tolerated by a free people. And I'm so glad, particularly, that it's holding these individuals accountable, because I think that we have got to start thinking up for ourselves and making it so that you don't get to say that I'm just following policy. I'm just doing what my boss said. That's no longer acceptable. You need to make decisions and decide that, no, it is not okay for me to touch someone's private parts. We have private parts that nobody can touch without our permission. And that doesn't change just because we need to fly across the country. So that's what this bill is going to do, is allow us to actually charge these individuals for the crimes that they're committing.
A classic Heather Fazio line that I've heard dozens of times is, "This is unacceptable." And it seems like we've stumbled across yet another government action that is unacceptable in the eyes of Heather Fazio. And this particular government action, as we saw last session, is unacceptable in the eyes of a whole lot of Texans, from progressive ACLU types to NRA card-carrying Tea Party members. There was a massive coalition that was built last time around. So tell us this, Heather, for those of us that are on our wits' end with political activism, what is going to be different about this session compared to last session that's going to allow this bill to pass?
Well, first, I just want to say that if you're at your wit's end with political activism, by all means, disengage. Do what's good for you and your family and your heart and your mind. Don't beat yourself up if you're not into this stuff. I think that there's two arms to the movement. I think that there's social activism, which is totally disengaged from politics, where you're raising your family, raising children in the spirit of non-aggression, and teaching them to really fully reach their potential as beautiful, free human beings. Starting businesses that allow people to have alternatives to the institutions that exist through the government now. Educating each other, educating yourself on how to actually live freely in this unfree world. And so I think that that's incredibly important. And if you're not into political activism, don't do it. Do what makes you happy and what is fulfilling to you. But for those of us who are having a good time telling these dickheads like it is, go and do it. Join Texans for Accountable Government. We're going to be down at the State House. We are involved in local political activism too, and it's important, like we said before, for people to stand up for themselves. So if we're going to be going to court, if we're going to be going down to city council, we need to be telling it like it is, building bridges with people that we don't always agree with, but when there's issues we agree on, building those bridges and those coalitions. And that's what TAG's all about, is single issue coalitions that unite the community so that we can really fully realize that it's the state versus the people in a lot of instances. And when we drop the partisanism and the party lines and the nonsense, the political rhetoric that the establishment has us bickering back and forth about, we can actually make great strides for liberty, particularly here in Texas, which has a huge culture of anti-authoritarianism. So I'm looking forward to building those bridges and working with folks. One of the other issues that we're working on is, some of you may have heard that in San Antonio, for example, they're requiring that students wear RFID microchips in order to track their locations. And they're doing this without an opt-out policy. So anyone who has religious concerns, which we're seeing with Andrea Hernandez, who's having to take this to federal court in order to opt out of this program and to continue to attend the John Jay Science and Engineering Academy, which she earned her right to attend. People object on health concerns with health reasons. I mean, these trackers are constantly emitting a radio frequency signal, and it's not only theirs that is going to be affecting their growing hearts and brains and these young women with their growing breasts. It's not only theirs, but every other student that's in the classroom, that's in the hallway. It's all being magnified, and it's definitely making an effect on their bodies, especially when you magnify that with the cell phones that they're all carrying around too, which is bad in and of itself, but it's voluntary. So we have 3 bills actually that have been introduced to the Texas House that will either restrict or forbid local school districts from making it mandatory for students to carry these things around. Really is a great bill, and I'm so grateful to see that there are legislators willing to take a bold stance against this technology, this new police state, which that we're seeing, which is all electronic, and you can't really see it with your bare eyes, but it's increasing, and it's coming even for our children. And so we have the ACLU I talked to today, which is on board. We have folks with the Tea Party who's on board, and we have all kinds of different civil liberties and electronic freedom activists that are willing to step forward and do what it's going to take in order to get this bill passed. I've been working with Dr. Catherine Albrecht, who's out of New Hampshire, who has done extensive research on RFID technology. She's a Harvard graduate who has put her degree to very good use in learning about the technology that is being used, not just in schools, but in really all kinds of merchandise. It's being used to track inventory, and now they're using it to track children like livestock. And I personally find it just absolutely offensive and unacceptable.
Yes, it is indeed unacceptable. That came out naturally. That's funny. But the question still remains. You didn't answer my question. And I was asking out of genuine curiosity because I'm one who is favoring more of the counter-economic, educational, build these alternative institutions, but I still have a place in my heart for the political activism because, as you said, it feels really good to tell them off, and I've been yearning to tell the city council off for a while. But the question still remains, and I was genuinely curious with this TSA bill, because if I am going to do any political activism, boy, would it be nice to fly out of Austin Bergstrom International Airport without having to be groped, because it makes me feel very belittled and inconsistent and inhuman to put myself through that, more so by the fact that I choose to do so because it's convenient than the fact that it's happening. But tell me, though, what is going to be different about this session? What are we going to be able to do this session that we couldn't do last session? Is there a different vibe? Is there a different strategy? Is the bill more sound? Can we pass it this session? Because we couldn't pass it last session. What's going to be different?
Well, there was an incredible, unprecedented amount of political maneuvering that was done by the so-called leadership of Texas in order to keep this bill from getting passed. And the grassroots really demonstrated how we can really build bridges with people that are not necessarily politically aligned. And this session is going to be different, I think, mostly because of the incredible turnover that happened with the new election. 70% of the House are freshmen this year. It's an incredible amount of people that are brand new to the Texas House. And most of them were elected by the people that were supporting this bill last time, and they were fed up with their representatives for the maneuvering that they did during the last session. And with leadership like Representative Simpson in the Texas House, even though he's not going to be Speaker like many of us had wanted, he has had a huge influence on the integrity and the way people do business in the Texas House.
One man.
So I'm looking forward to really pushing, and we are going to have to do work. This isn't just going to happen. It's going to take people getting active, calling their representatives, going to their district offices, coming down to the Capitol, phone calls, emails, and encouraging your family members to do the same.
I've got a question. Even before I woke up and back when I was still a statist, people always say, call your congressman, call your representative. I have never to this day ever, not one time, called any representative. I've spoken in front of my city council, and that's about it. But does that really work? I mean, what are the odds of a dude who represents 300,000 people? Is he going to be able to take 300,000 calls? And I know not everybody's going to call in, but do you actually get through to them, say, yo, Mike Conaway, well, that's national, and that's my national District 11 rep. Yo, Mike Conaway, this is Caleb Leverett, and I'm really down with this neocon stuff that you're doing. I mean, are they really going, now I wouldn't obviously talk like that, I'm having fun on the radio, but do the representatives really take calls? Do they take notes and like, oh my, Caleb Leverett called and Heather Fazio called and she's really concerned? Do they really even give a shit? Or is that, I just get the feeling that they just say, call your congressman, and they just go, I'm going to do whatever I want to do, and I'm going to entertain these bozos who keep electing me. Does it really do any good?
Well, calling Congress does absolutely no good, and that's why I focused my energy on local and state politics, where we do actually have an impact. And I've been in legislators' offices where, let me just first say that representatives are not taking phone calls for themselves. They have a staff that works hard to do that for them. And when I'm in there, their phones are ringing off the hook, and it feels really good to hear them say, oh, okay, the bill that I was last session, there were 2 times when I was in there meeting with staffers about a specific bill, and the phone was ringing off the hook about that bill. And it felt really good. I said, wow, there's a lot of interest in this bill, knowing that we sent out an action alert and it's going out all across the state and people are making those phone calls. And, this is all subject to open records requests, and we can see how many people made the phone calls. We were able to see that 13,000 phone calls were generated last session during the special session in order to get Perry to add the TSA bill on to the call. The way that it works in Texas when we have a special session, it's because the governor has called it. And so we put pressure on him, 13,000 phone calls and emails worth of pressure, and got it onto the call. Now, it still didn't pass, unfortunately, because of the maneuvering, but we did get it on there, and that was because of all the people taking action. And in 2009, there was a bill that we generated. We were working with a number of groups on a bill that would have allowed CPS to question your children without you even having the knowledge about it. And we were able to generate 30,000 phone calls and emails to the governor's office, and he vetoed that bill.
That was a success.
That was a big success, and that was one of the very first legislative session that Texans for Accountable Government participated in. And we've had more success in killing bad bills than we have in getting good bills passed. But we're working on that because there are a number of good bills that we want to get passed this session. But we've been able to kill bills like ones that authorize checkpoints for driver's license and insurance, or sobriety checkpoints, or something called southbound checkpoints when they're looking for guns and money. We killed all of those bills. We killed a bill that would have allowed GPS tracking devices on vehicles without warrants. The DPS director, Steve McCraw, was down there testifying, and of course he's worked with Homeland Security and the FBI, and his argument was, well, the FBI can do it, DPS should be able to do it. And we fought hard against that one, and we killed that bill.
Dressed up like Nazis?
We did dress up like Nazis in order to demonstrate the absurdity of having checkpoints in Texas. We actually went to 8 different senator offices and presented them with the Fuhrer's Favorite Award for excellence in the area of tyranny. And not only was it so much fun, and you can see the video if you just search Nazi support checkpoints in Texas, not only was it a blast to actually do and to call them out on just how ridiculous they are, but it was successful because the next day the bill was reintroduced, a substitute bill in committee, and it removed the provision for checkpoints.
Yeah.
And so it was fun, it was creative, it was innovative, it got on the news, and it worked.
Wow,
and that's the kind of activism that I'm into.
Let's do it again.
That'd be fun. That sounds. It seems like I might have seen a
Kind of
picture.
nerve-wracking.
Were you in on that one?
Yeah.
No, seems like I might have seen a picture. Was Representative David Simpson part of? Was that not his?
That
deal?
was the second incarnation when we dressed up like TSA agents. Clay was
Oh,
there
okay, with the rubber gloves.
with the rubber gloves, and we ran into David Simpson and like 10 TSA agents. We performed fake grope downs at bus stops. And we did multiple, and people just sat there and watched it, thought it was weird. But at one of the stops, some guy intervened and almost threw like a slug at one of the TSA agents. So it's good to see that will to resist is alive. But Heather brings up a great point in that, a lot of people are fed up with political activism. A lot of people see it as fruitless. Don't be involved in political activism. A lot of people are actually making some change and creating more freedom through political activism. A lot of people got turned on to the philosophy of liberty through political candidates like Antonio Beeler and Caleb Leverett. And the beauty of it is here in Central Texas, and here's a shameless plug for Lone Star Libertopia, LoneStarLibertopia.com. If you happen to be listening and you don't yet live in Central Texas, if you live in Odessa, Texas, or Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas, we invite you to come on, make the move down Central. But there's a beautiful fusion of activism taking place here, of political activism and post-political activism, counter-economic activism, education. We're building alternative institutions, but we still have enough credibility to go and sit down with the very politicians that we're competing with. And I think the beauty of it is, as the alternative institutions begin to rise in prominence and develop more, there's going to be more risk on those that are creating these alternative societies. So it's going to be absolutely invaluable as the risk increases to be able to sit down and have a seat at the table with those who have somewhat of a say over the institution of power, like David Simpson, for example, or even having personal relationships with city council members and chiefs of police and the director of the DPS. Even if they think you're a total asshole or a gadfly and they want you out of their hair, if you're able to generate 30,000 calls or 20,000 calls, there's a certain level of respect.
Yeah.
And it's that respect that I believe can transfer into not only political respect, in that these individuals have the ability to use political leverage to make things change, that these individuals have the ability to unelect people. Randy Shade, rest in peace. She's still alive, but she's no longer city councilwoman. But on top of that, we can leverage that political respect into a genuine respect for our rights. And I believe that by participating within the system as a movement while simultaneously building the alternative to the system has great benefit. And it's good to see Texans for Accountable Government continuing on that posture, continuing to focus on those institutions which most keep people from living free, which most create a generation of slaves, pushing back on the RFID and the TSA. There's a marijuana bill coming up. So it's great to see this fusion. Get your butts down here to Central Texas. You can participate in the counter economy, and you can have people represent you when it comes to the lobbying to make sure the freaking state gets off your back. And I'm really excited to see what this area is going to look like in 3 to 5 years after a few more legislative sessions and after several more institutions being created. That 70% turnover is huge.
Yeah, it is huge. And you said something that's also huge. And as a non-pot smoker, as am I, did you explain this? You said marijuana bill. Is this a pro, against? I mean, what is the marijuana bill he was talking about?
Well, we fully anticipate a medical marijuana bill being introduced by Elliot Neistat out of here in Austin, but we haven't seen that quite yet. What we have seen is House Bill 184, introduced by Representative Dutton out of Houston. And what the bill would do is move possession of less than an ounce from a Class B misdemeanor, which is arrestable, and most people do get arrested for it, to a Class C misdemeanor, which is still technically arrestable, but rarely are people arrested for a Class C misdemeanor. So this is pretty much making and having an ounce or less of marijuana a ticketable offense in Texas.
Okay, that's at least a tiny nudge in the right direction. I was hoping you could say, yeah, you can have 5 or 6 plants and breed them.
Well, maybe if we had people like you helping us out, we'd have a bill like that.
I'll be here in a month. And by the way, you have convinced me. I will take you on your testimony that calling, at least on the state level, state and below, actually does some good, correct?
Yeah, and it takes a minute.
I'll start doing it.
Takes
yeah,
1
it doesn't
minute.
take any time. It's not like it's preventing you from doing something else.
It makes a huge difference, especially for those of us who are down on the front lines there in the Capitol building.
Okay. The calls. Maybe I'll make some calls this session.
Well, like I said, I'll be here in a month, and I'll do more than just calls. I'm itching. I'm really itching to just sink my teeth in some like Liberty meat down here. And I'm ready to get on this stuff, man. This is exciting. This is where all the cool
Liberty
cats
meat
are.
Are you going to sink your teeth into?
It is. Yeah, and you know what's so unique and has helped TAG to success, has so much success over the only 4 years that we've been around, is our motto of humanize, harmonize, and localize. Humanizing is really talking about the human elements, about what's going on, how we can relate to each other, building relationships with our law enforcement, with our elected officials, with our public servants, rather, and really connecting them on a human level, harmonizing with people that you don't always agree with, but when you do find something to agree on, that you work together on it. And it really opens up that communication so that you can realize how much we really do agree on. And then localizing, like we've talked about, is forgetting about federal politics, because the federal government is so far gone that if we can all focus on our own states and our own cities, our counties, then we're going to be able to actually make a difference. And, you know, last legislative session, I built a pretty good relationship with one of the sergeants of DPS that worked there at the Capitol, so that we kind of had a point person when there was an issue. We had someone that knows us and is willing to sit down and talk with us about whatever the issue is. Unfortunately, he's not there this session, but we had a problem on the first day of the session, of course, with somebody filming, and he got detained and was told he might have to leave. And so I marched myself down there and talked to him about that, and then we filed a complaint because he actually had the audacity to tell us that he was the law. He couldn't cite the law, the policy, the rule that he was enforcing.
So you asked him.
So I asked him, and he said that he was the law, and that I needed to do what he told me to do, and that this conversation was over, and I can file a complaint with that if I want to. And I told him that I did want to, and I did plan on that. And I understand that he is offended or intimidated. He said he's intimidated because we're questioning his authority, but he works for us, and if he is to enforce the law, he needs to understand the law that he's enforcing. And he didn't like that at all. And so we went and went over there to file the complaint with his boss. And she actually knew who I was when I wrote down my name. She said, "Heather Fazio, I recognize that name. Do you know so-and-so? Craig Cummings was the sergeant before." Apparently he had told her about me since she was taking his position, so that he knew who we were and kind of planted that seed. And she was very polite. She was nice. She took our statements, and I'm going to be following up with that, because it just really isn't okay for a person with a badge to be telling me that he's the law. Not something that I'm willing to tolerate, and that's why we proceeded with filing the complaint, and we will be following up.
Yeah, but 99.999% of the population would be like, okay, you're the law. And so that's why it's great when people like you actually stand up, put these guys back in their place.
Yeah, he didn't like it. And there was another one that came up right over on our side. I wish I would have gotten all the audio, but we did get some of it. But it was just so disgusting. Him just so outright with, I'm the boss. I'm running things here. And I touched him on his hand and I said, I don't follow orders, sir. And he pulled his hand away from me. So, we set the session off to the right start and filed our complaints. We had actually 2 complaints because another TAG member, Katie Brewer, was detained by the folks down outside the Capitol at the North Gate. Apparently you're not supposed to turn in right here. She was getting dropped off. She went to bring me some food, and they turned in to drop her off, and apparently you can't turn in. There's no signs coming from that angle, and they detained her, and they tried to detain the guy in the car, and she told him to go, and Katie got in the way of the cops so she couldn't get the license. And but she ended up having to sit down there for 5 minutes until they called backup, 5 DPS troopers for a woman who was bringing food to someone who had clearly just turned in the wrong way. And actually, I think that John was detained there the last session when he turned in there. So I think we might need to talk to them about their signage. Especially if they're going to be calling for backup and utilizing resources in order to detain people who simply make a wrong turn into the Capitol.
This gentleman in the audience had a comment about the committees and how important it is to engage in this type of lobbying and action during the committees, to call the committee head, especially if he's in your district. Tell us about some of the strategy and leverage during these committees. Is this a wonderful opportunity for you guys to get the voice out? Can you target committee chairpersons? What's the committee process, and why is it so important?
Well, when bills are introduced to their respective chamber, as you know, senators and representatives can introduce bills, and we'll use the House of Representatives for our example. When a representative introduces a bill, it gets filed. The next step is it gets referred to a committee. Once it goes to committee, it's in the hands of the 5 to 15, up to 15 representatives that serve on that committee. And it gets introduced, and they're in charge of vetting the bill. Now, we get 5 days' notice when we know that the bill is going to be heard in committee, and that's our opportunity to take action and rally our troops and get down there to testify for or against the bill. In committee is the best place to kill a bad bill, and that's where we've had our success, is when we can go and we can articulate our arguments about why a certain, checkpoints, for example, are unconstitutional and not a direction that we should be moving in Texas, and so we're able to testify there.
How long do you get to, if you're going to get there and testify or speak, how long, like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes?
You get 3 minutes. Everyone gets 3 minutes who wants to speak.
Okay, and what is I'm sure there's some kind of registration process where you got to, fill out your name, rank, serial number. Is that done online? Is that done there as you walk in?
Yeah, it's right when you walk in. They're generally in the back, and they're called witness affirmation forms. And you can sign up and just register your position for or against a bill, or you can sign up to speak. And you'll get your 3 minutes, and sometimes we're there until 2 in the morning in order to get everybody heard. But, that's just what we have to do. And so that's the best opportunity. You can provide written or oral testimony, and we are able to target the committee members, particularly the chair, and we want to target him for a good bill. We want to target him before, because he is at his discretion when the bill comes up for hearing. So if we're trying to get HB 80 passed, what we want to do is target the chair of probably the criminal jurisprudence committees where it'll be referred to. And so we want to lobby the chairman of the criminal jurisprudence committee in order to bring it up. And so we'll be doing that as soon as we know what committee it's referred to. None of the bills have been referred quite yet, but it should be starting now this week. Last week was a lot of ceremony nonsense that they do, and then this week I think that they're getting to work, and so we'll see the committee appointments, which is really, really big, seeing who gets appointed to chairman of these various committees, where they're located, and it really is important to get their constituents calling, which is why we've created the TAG Legislative Action Network, so that we can start documenting our supporters, who we have in what district, so that we can contact Susie when Susie's in so-and-so's district and we want specifically her representative to be targeted. And so that's what we're really starting to build this. This session is going to be the first building block to this Legislative Action Network. But with as much success and the strides that TAG's been taking, we're going to be around for the long haul. And so we're going to be able to get this Legislative Action Network up and running and strong so that we can continue to kill bad bills and pass bills that create a free and prosperous Texas by decentralizing, making more transparent and accountable the government that we have here in Texas.
Yes, kill bills. I like that. There's a movie made about that, wasn't there? Wasn't it called Kill Bill? I never saw it, but yeah, we could play off of that somehow. I know I'm just being ornery, and I'm going to bring it up again. I'm going to be all over that texting ban or texting while driving proposed ban.
Get 'em.
I'm going to be all over it. That's
Just
my,
like you were in Odessa, Texas.
That's right. That's my pet.
Caleb Leverett
that's my
may
pet.
have indeed single-handedly killed the texting while driving ban in Odessa, Texas. Caleb Leverett, ladies and gentlemen. Tell us about it, Caleb. Tell us the story.
My very, very first time to ever get active in any shape, form, or fashion. I say it. Well, yeah, really ever. There was a proposal in Odessa to go, and I just happened to read about it on Facebook. With the local CBS 7 affiliate posted on Facebook that there was going to be a proposal to ban texting while driving, and I'd had enough, and I didn't know what else. I'm so tired of government's their jaws just coming at us in every direction possible. And I just had enough, and I went up there and I filled out the cute little card and said who I was, where I lived, and all that good stuff. And there was about 80 people on the left side of the aisle, all proposed in support of it. They were only. It was different with city council. They only allowed 3 people to speak for it. You got 5 minutes, and 3 people to speak against it. You got 5 minutes. The 3 people they had a full boat. There's a young girl. Her name slips me at the moment, but she almost died in a crash. Her car is parked out in front of one of the local high schools there in Odessa, and it says "Don't text while drive," which I'm a big fan of. I think that's great. Put a wrecked vehicle with a big old sign says "Don't text while drive." I think that is hugely effective, completely voluntary, but yet, she took it a step further. Of course, she's a young kid. She's 17, 18 years old now, 19, whatever. And she gave her testimony how she almost died and how this needs to pass. And there's a couple there who lost their son, I believe, to a texting while driving accident. And believe me, I get it. I understand people die in crashes. And then there was this former city councilman, Royce Boniford, who, he was a pro at this. He got up there and he wooed the people, and he just thought it was pretty much in the bag. In fact, I saw him. I later did a TV interview with a local CBS affiliate. I went back and watched the day before, and they were pretty much high-fiving each other about how this was in the bag. And they asked me on afterwards, and I got up there and I whipped out my little pocket constitution, and I pretty much read off. Thank you. I read off Amendment 4, the guarantee, like I've said earlier, against unreasonable searches and seizures. And I went on and on and on. I was the only person, I will say this, to actually get dung by the bell. I was on a roll. I was just letting them have it, and I was like, "Can I finish? You let other people finish before." No, you're done. And the mayor said, "Well, I think it's time to just quit." And they asked for a proposal. And one guy, one of the city councilmen said, "I think it's time to stop." What was his name? I forget it. I forget his name. Anyway, he said, the mayor says, "Is there a second?" And he looks around, and he looks around. There's no second. Motion dies for lack of second. Bam! That gavel hit the ground. Man, I thought I was going to get lynched. People stormed out of there. Got up and, "Oh my God, can't believe it. And they just stormed out. And then the media starts coming over to me, and I'll be honest with you, I had no earthly idea what had just happened because I was so new to this. But I figured out pretty quick. I pissed that side of the aisle off, and they're all storming out and telling me, yelling at me. There was one guy actually had to be escorted by one of the cops. He was so mad at me. And I said, hang on, just hold that thought. I will get with you. Just let's go out there where I don't think I'm going to get lynched. And, of course, I did the interview, and I got on the next day and talked to that CBS guy and just explained why I said what I said. I said, I'm not pro dying in car wrecks. I'm simply against the authoritarianism of people telling us what to do, stealing from us in order to fund the officers to enforce it, which to pass a bill that just won't do any good. People are still going to text and drive.
I know I do.
Honestly, I do too. And I have learned this. There's a skill to it. You don't do it while you're going through a busy intersection. That's just suicide. But if you're out in the middle of BFE, out in the middle of nowhere, yeah, I mean, just look up the road, make sure no one's coming. If you got to do something, just do it. If you're in the middle of town and it's really, really busy, either don't do it at all or pull over. And I think the public airwaves, the public radio shows like this, talking about real solutions to the problem, we're all tempted by it. We are all tempted to do that sort of thing. Just pull over. It's okay to just be a little late. If you absolutely have to send the damn text, just pull over. But don't go begging governments to intervene, because when you ask governments to intervene, they will always grant you your wish. And then they will tax the holy living shit out of you in order to pay for it and tell you why it's for your own good. And I'll get off my soapbox now. Whose turn?
The notion that governments can't control people's behavior is actually false. Governments can. Governments can stop people from texting and driving. Governments can stop people from drinking. Governments can stop people from doing drugs. But they have to go to such extremes like they do in Singapore, where they behead people if they are caught with any amount of marijuana on them, that they do that. And so people who ask for government to protect them from other people, you have two options. One, you have a government that is ineffective, and then you're just destroying lives through these laws, and the people who end up getting stuck with the unintended consequences of these laws. Or you could go all the way to the extreme to just absolute tyranny, where you're extremely successful. I'm sure that in North Korea there's very little murder with guns, but I don't think that's the society that we want to live in. And so I just like to caution people from using the argument that if you outlaw it, it won't happen, because extreme tyranny can actually change behavior, but I'm sure that no one here supports that.
That's right. Extreme tyranny can change behavior, but at what cost? And when it comes to text message bans, here on the Caleb Leverett Show, we have a message for you.
That's some statist ass shit.
That's right.
That's right. Banning behavior such as texting while driving, any kind of behavior, if it's not creating a victim, is some statist-ass shit.
Some statist-ass shit.
And Heather, you said something a minute ago about telling these dickheads. What was your word? These dickheads, how they...
I said it.
I double dog dare you to get out on the floor. I will put on of the state capitol. I will have my video camera and tell these dickheads what you think of. I dare you.
We do it every session. Have you ever seen my videos?
Those words?
No, I don't use those words, but that's never going to get me anywhere.
I know.
I save those words for internet radio.
That's right, because we are totally uncensored, and I only have two basic rules on here. You can't threaten anybody, and B, you got to be interesting and
have a beer, Beeler.
Yeah, have a beer. I'm going to kick you. No, I'm not going to kick you. I'm sitting here threatening Antonio Beer.
NAP, Caleb. One thing that was funny, speaking of being foolish and tarnishing your credibility at the Capitol, when Alex Jones was sorry, I'm not trying to rip on Alex Jones here, just thought it was funny and relevant. But when he was protesting the TSA action, the first thing he did was take a whole crowd of people to the House of Representatives, which like 2 days before had unanimously passed the anti-TSA bill. So people
He
are
went
like,
and shouted down the wrong
people
chamber.
are like, "You are tyrannical government taking away our rights."
He's
smashing
famous
this bill."
for that. He's
Like,
famous for making.
We passed it unanimously 2 days ago, dude. Like,
I wasn't aware of that, but I heard his bit on
That was classic.
Ron Paul's speech at Paul Festival in Tampa.
what's that?
Ron, he was talking about Ron Paul's speech and how at Paul Festival and the controversy between
I
the
thought
Paul
Ron Paul
Festival.
didn't speak at Paul Festival.
You got it! Ding, 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 ding. That's exactly the point. Then the video went viral, and all of a sudden,
yes.
he got called out on it, and he took it down. I mean,
Everyone makes mistakes. I was
of course, and I'm
particularly-
not slamming. I admire him. I've learned a lot. He wasn't one of the people that woke me up, but I admire Alex. I think he does.
He's got a lot of balls.
He's got a lot of balls. I think he needs some table manners when he goes on Piers Morgan's show. But
To rallies at APD headquarters. Oh,
do what's that?
Nothing.
Oh.
What are you going to say, Heather? Heather, you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, I appreciate him a lot. Whenever I first got involved, I listened to his show regularly, and it just wasn't something that I wanted to continue to subject myself to. All the negativity and the yelling and the doomsday and they're trying to kill all of our children. Like, I mean, what that put me personally, kind of a personal story, but it put me in the frame of mind where I didn't even want to have children at that point because my perception of the world was so terrible and so dark because of the negative energy that I was taking in from listening to his show all the time. Now I appreciate and I respect the work that he does, but I had to turn the radio off and start getting active in order to really bring myself out of that depression and to want to take action and to feel empowered to take action, to realize that we can all make a difference when we stand up for ourselves and stand up for each other.
Yeah. Peace and freedom.
So the moral of the story is I want to have kids now. I'm going to have babies, and then I'm going to adopt some more babies, too, because we don't want to bring too many.
Minimum.
Not
six.
me.
That's funny. No, we need to bring it on.
I'm done.
Minimum 6, minimum 10, 210. So that's an interesting point that you make. So Jones, while railing against eugenicists and efforts to limit reproduction, scares some people, some rational people, into not even wanting to have kids in the first place, which of course is the ultimate way to fight the New World Order, in my opinion, is to have a child and raise them to respect individual liberty and
Or many children.
and autonomous communities. But so that had the opposite effect. And yeah, that's a critique that I have. It's a little bit too heavy on the fear-based mentality, and fear is a very strong motivator for people to behave or to lack action. And even working here at the bookstore, there's a lot of people that I think maybe might be a little bit too into fear and just being involved in the liberty movement and the Alex Jones followers for the past decade. Like when you give into fear and essentially you allow the enemy to win in many ways, when you allow the enemy to dictate your behavior, when you change your behavior based on potential consequences out of fear, then I think in many ways, you're giving up some of your freedom because you're allowing your enemy to dictate your path. Of course, in saying that, it's very difficult where all of our choices are limited whenever there's a gun in the room, right? So I still file my income tax, and I certainly don't appreciate the $21 I paid last time. That was $21 too much. $16 the time before. Nonetheless, I'd rather not file at all, but I file because I'm afraid that they'll try to hurt my family or take my property. But I think when there's too much fear to where it essentially mummifies us and prevents us from acting at all, it actually can be something that is counterproductive. So it's a very fine line to balance because there's a lot of stuff to be afraid of. And shit is hitting the fan, and there is a small, tiny elite that's manipulating world events in order to bring about their agenda of total dictatorial, terrible control, just like all the conspiracies say. But if you hammer it into people's heads and if you just dwell on only that and you fail to focus on the beautiful things in life and the freedom that we do have and we enjoy every single day. I mean, look what we're contemplating when you should shoot a cop here on online radio, and they're not raiding the spot.
No, we haven't looked around the corner, though. We might want to check as you exit.
Maybe the FBI's in our midst right now.
Well, I think Alex
they
Jones
could
is
be.
good for bringing people to Austin come to the compound, and then we can work on
empowering them
and showing them that there's peaceful alternatives and ways that we can build a better, freer society.
Yeah, I heard that libertarian, what's his name, Glenn Beck?
Glenn Beck. Making a super city.
Is he making some $1 billion super city? Or
a $2 billion super city.
I think I heard that on your show this morning.
All tax proceeds go to Israel.
Yeah, exactly. No, he's libertarian. He really is. Glenn Beck's libertarian. I'm
rethinking my libertarianism.
If I shed a tear like Beck does, would you believe me? I'm libertarian.
I'm excited about Glenn Beck's $2 billion Texas city. I think it's a
$2
step
billion
in the right direction.
Oh my, $2 billion.
Apparently, he's investing $2 billion to create a small.
Does he have $2 billion?
No, he doesn't have $2 billion.
Oh,
no, it's going to be other people's money. Whose money is it going to be?
OPM.
Hey, as long as they give it voluntarily.
You down with OPP? Other people's property?
So we should probably bring Harlan Dietrich into the mix here. We got about 43 minutes in the program, and we promised you that we'd hear from Mr. Harlan Dietrich himself, if he can hear us now.
I think he's knee-deep in alligators right now. He's got a little...
He's trying to make money. He's a businessman.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's still buying books. No, you don't have to fetch him. If he's available, great.
Whenever he's available, we'll hear from him. We can chat about 9/11. What really happened that day?
I believe everything the government told me, and I'll never question everything because governments are all good all the time. Amen. Hallelujah, holy shit.
Wait a second.
To quote...
Never question everything. He has it written on his arm. Question everything.
I was doing that was my Clark Griswold interpretation.
Oh.
Pass the Tylenol.
Nice.
And he went off on his rant.
That's a good.
Yeah. I do have question everything tattooed on my arm for a very good reason. You know, everybody always asks me if I'm part of the Illuminati. Would it help if I put an arrow? Did I need to get an arrow tattooed where like shooting a bloody explosion?
Well, it should be upside down. My friend Sean here just got a badass tattoo on his back, and right in the middle of the centerpiece is the upside down triangle, half in the ground.
Let's see it.
I wasn't aware of this awesome Brave New Books
studio.
logo.
People are
raising
stripping.
money.
People are stripping.
Holy shit! Look at that.
That is cool.
Oh my god!
Someone should take a picture of that and post it.
Take a picture, post it on crankmycat.com.
Yeah, I'm going to have to.
Here, take a picture.
I just.
Show the live
I'm
studio
staring at a naked or a topless man's back
This is how
at
we
the
make
moment.
money. This is
Another
how
man
we're going to
crush
make
is in the
money.
mix.
And I'm a straight dude, but this is just really.
Correction, was a straight dude.
I used to be
it's hard to
straight.
see.
I'm no longer straight. I don't suppose.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, what? I
Don't tread on me, liberty or death. This guy's all. This is a right-wing extremist if I ever saw one. We are changed. Don't tread on me. Upside down pyramid. This guy needs to be locked away.
Have you been stopped by any cops and been asked to lift up your shirt so they could catalog your tattoos?
Not yet.
They catalog tattoos and put them in Fusion Center databases now.
They do, and DPS takes pictures with their smartphone of anybody they encounter so they can put them in the database.
But,
especially if they're chalking.
Yeah, like Santa Claus.
But it's likely that now, thanks to the hard work of Texans for Accountable Government and the Texas Motorcycle Rights Association, they used to regularly pull over bikers and people that are in motorcycle clubs, 1% or not, and they'd pull them over arbitrarily. They'd bust them. They'd start taking pictures of their tats. He can come sit right here, actually. They'd take pictures of their tattoos. They'd put them in databases, and then Tag linked up with some motorcycle rights activists, and we managed to pass a bill. We actually did pass a bill. It was somewhat toothless, and I didn't follow up on it because I was taking lead on it. But there's some room to be worked on. But the point is that because of our hard work, because of us putting mud in the face of Director Steve McCraw, ex-FBI, director of the DPS, as we said before, it's likely that the bikers are not being harassed like they used to, and it wasn't necessarily written in the bill, but because we pushed a bill to require privacy safeguards and transparency for fusion centers, and because it was a big episode, and because there was committee hearings about it, and because Director Steve McCraw was made to answer for his troopers violating the rights of motorcycle enthusiasts, many of whom are veterans, they ended up backing off of the motorcycle folks, and the motorcycle rights activists have since not reported any of those abuses. So it's yet another way, well, even though I'm an anarchist agorist, that was another political activity that we took place that actually made people's lives more free. And it wasn't even they're targeting us through the fusion centers. That's still happening. But at least the motorcycle rights activists are not being targeted through the fusion centers. Occupiers and liberty activists, well, we don't know what's going on, actually. Right? Should we do an open records request for Texans for Accountable Government to Eric? Has that been done
Do we have
recently?
enough money to pay for that? I mean, it would cost thousands of dollars to get all the money to pay for the documents that we have because they are talking about us all the time.
Somebody just addicted their donation to donating money here a second ago.
Yeah, and I'm tapped out completely because we've been on the radio for 2.5 hours, and that little that chip-in thing at libertymintradio.com is not budged. So
donate now, or fusion centers will take over the world.
Yeah, I'm curing myself of my sexually transmitted disease of donating too much money. I'm putting on a helmet on that soldier, and I'm not budging no more. I'm moving to Austin. That's my donation.
So we happen to be joined by none other than the proprietor himself, the master, the bookmeister, Harlan Dietrich of Brave New Bookstore since 2006. Brave New Books.
That's right. Hello, John. And I'd like to say I'm just sexually transmittable disease free. I have no money to give because I'm so broke owning a bookstore that disease has never afflicted me. So
that's right. So come donate here, and when you donate at Brave New Books, you also get products in exchange for your donation. That's your choice of products: Beyond Tangy Tangerine, One World Way.
Is it really a donation?
Joel Skousen, Strategic Relocation, the film, and the book.
I like it.
So Harlan Dietrich, many people are like, oh, wow, the bookstore, it existed since 2006. I didn't think there was liberty movements going on since before Ron Paul.
Does this work?
Yeah, that actually should work. That was Antonio Bueller's headphones there. So tell us, why did you take part in starting Brave New Books? Well, first tell us, what is Brave New Books for some listeners who may not have heard of the Brave New Bookstore, bravenewbookstore.com.
Brave New Books. Well, what is it? It is a bookstore dedicated to what we like to call suppressed information. There's always two sides to a story, John, and we are always there to give you the other side of the coin and let you know maybe what the mainstream media isn't telling you about history, economics, law, alternative medicine, secret societies, those sorts of things. And so, well, the bookstore was started with the general philosophy of freedom of information, right? So everybody should have the ability to get their hands on this sort of information and not just have to get it on the internet. We wanted a physical brick-and-mortar place where people could come and share ideas and look at the book and flip through the book that they've only seen on the internet. And so make basically the liberty movement three-dimensional rather than a two-dimensional screensaver that people only, were able to interact with through their computers. We sometimes get addicted to Facebooking and the Facebook activism out there, but why not actually get to meet people and talk with them and and fellowship with them and figure out solutions to some of this crap. So that was the idea. We're located 1 block away from the largest university in North America, and we try to make some of these topics influence the dialogue that should be going on in our universities across the country. But
and directly underneath one of the biggest banks in America, physically, literally underneath a bank.
I know, yeah.
That's awesome.
We're an underground bookstore, literally and metaphorically. But what I like to tell everybody is that we're all under a bank to some extent, and we just physically sort of represent that. But so the metaphor kind of works. For any other bookstore, if it was, you probably couldn't move too much, soft serve yogurt or something out of this place. But the fact that we have suppressed books that we're selling, it actually does work, being underground and off the beaten path. That sort of metaphor does actually work in our favor in a way, but doesn't work for people trying to find us or trying to park near us. But for the whole sort of feeling of the bookstore, it kind of works. But
Underground, Brave New Books, BraveNewBookstore.com.
And John got his radio career kicked off here at the bookstore.
That's right.
We had a radio show called PNAC Radio back in 2006.
That's right. We used to broadcast from the back room, which also served as the underground, shadowy headquarters of Operation Defuse on the on the Jesse Ventura Conspiracy Theory show. What was that? 5 years ago now? 4 or 5 years ago, we were doing the PNAC radio show. I'd sit in with the guys doing the Project for New American Citizen, and how things have changed. But in reality, they haven't really changed at all. It's pretty much the same story going on. One thing that's changed here at the bookstore that I've recognized is it seems like the books and the products carried at the bookstore seem to have shifted along with the shift of consciousness and shift of overall philosophy and strategy of the whole patriot, anti-establishment, liberty, freedom movement, call it what you will. Mm-hmm. But, this store's been around since before the 2008 Ron Paul movement, which I think was responsible for really reigniting and uniting this whole broad-based liberty movement. But I remember in the early days when the shelves were still in the middle of the store, it was mostly 90% conspiracy theory type, exploring historical stuff, suppressed information. Nowadays, it seems there's a market anarchism section, and there's a whole lot of survival information, gardening information, and health products. So, did that just happen based on Harlan's interests, or is the bookstore evolving along with this movement of radicals?
We certainly evolve with the market. We want to respond to the market as any good capitalist would, right? So, definitely, we've charted where people's interests lie, and it's definitely getting away so much. Not getting away, but honestly, you read 3 or 4 of the foundational books that we have here on our shelves. I could name a few of them, and you really do understand a lot about the crap
None
that's
dare call
going
it conspiracy.
Well, there's a few.
Preacher from Jekyll Island.
Yeah, stuff like that. And you don't need to read 500 books on those sorts of subjects. So, what are people then interested in? Well, they're interested in providing for themselves. They're interested in building a new sort of community, a new parallel environment, a new way to think about authority and politics. And so, the libertarian and agorist sections definitely are a product of where people, I think, are headed in this whole movement. I think a lot of people come to that through alternative information, though. Like, what do some people say? You gotta find God through the devil, right? So, to maybe find the solutions, sometimes you gotta see what evil exists out there, and a lot of the books will illustrate very vividly some of the evils that the political world offers. And, so people are disgusted by that. So what does that lead them to? Well, it leads them to, being self-sufficient, being independent, figuring out these things, alternatives to this current system that we're in. And so, I think it's not only my where I am mentally, but I think it's more of an illustration of where a lot of people in this movement are headed. And, I want to sell a few books, so I want to, keep those ideas percolating and people thinking about where they want to be. So definitely gardening and things like that. These are definitely more of the direction the bookstore wants to head in, self-sufficiency and those sorts of concepts. But
I've always loved the collection of books that we have here too. When people come in and they're just totally surprised at it being totally unconventional.
Yeah.
But I think for me, more importantly, what this the bookstore served as kind of a community organizing centerpiece for what's been happening here in Austin, which I think is incredibly unique, and certainly in Texas, maybe the United States, and maybe maybe, dare I say it, the world
Ah.
in what's going on here in Texas,
Say it.
in Austin, Texas, with the movement that we have here, and what this central location has really served, and the kinds of lectures that we have, and the book signings that we have, and all of the various events, more than just the books on the shelves, but the people and the kinds of events that we're doing here are really groundbreaking and helping to empower us to really realize just how much power we have.
Wow. Well, thank you, Heather. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's always been a role of the bookstore. Is we wanted to, we wanted to sell not only books, but we wanted to sell community. We wanted people to feel like they belonged, and take it out from the television and the computer screens to some place where they actually can feel a sense of community with like-minded people. So yeah, that's what we've always tried to do. We've always tried to have free events, free book signings, free lectures on a whole host of different subjects. And so I hope in some way that what people around the world are seeing Austin as is this rising star in the liberty movement, with lots of different people moving here and lots of great activism, like the man sitting next to me doing. I hope to feel that Brave has, the bookstore has helped in some way contribute to that environment. So, that's a huge boost of pride that I have. So,
As you should.
Right in this very
thank you.
room. Groups have been formed and born, and their original organizing meetings have taken place. Right.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. You've been a part of a few of those groups, Joe. I think you've formed a few of those, haven't you?
Freedom Force International.
That's right. Which became tagged, didn't it? In some way? No. No, okay. I won't take credit for that. All right.
No.
Won't let me have
Give
that.
Chuck credit for that.
Okay.
Yeah, the first Peaceful Streets meeting was here. In fact, I think most of the Peaceful Streets meetings have been here.
Yep.
I actually had dinner on Saturday with two really great people I met through the Ron Paul movement, hardcore Ron Paul activists, and I didn't know it, but one of them actually, we were talking about why they moved to Austin, Texas, and she told me that she moved here because of Brave New Books.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
Nice.
The bookstore.
Well, very cool. Point her out to me. I'll give her a gift certificate or something.
Tell her to put it on Yelp. Yelp.com. BraveNewBookstore.com. 1904 Guadalupe.
That's pretty awesome. No, I have had people from around the world come in here. And I feel, they're like, oh, we just were passing through Austin, but we had to stop by and see the bookstore. And I'm always just kind of flattered that somebody from Ireland or Poland or something has to come down and see the bookstore just because they've heard about it. So that's always huge.
No, I was gonna. You said that down the street, which you're talking about, University of Texas,
right?
The largest university in North America.
I think it fluctuates always with UCLA and the University.
Like
of
number
Michigan.
of students or square.
The size is the largest.
No, the population, the student body.
Student body population. I had no earthly idea.
Yeah, it's always University of Michigan and UCLA. I think they're always kind of. Depending on which year that they have more people, it always rotates.
Well, Brave New Books. There you have it. Brave New Books is right down the street from arguably the largest populated university in North America. You learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Too bad those Longhorns are a bunch of statists. Nino. Another cool thing about Central Texas is the University of Texas campus has actually had probably one of the longest running libertarian groups out there. I'm just pulling this number out of my butt, but University of Texas had Libertarian Longhorns back before libertarianism was cool. A lot of local chapters have Young Americans for Liberty or Students for Liberty, but the University of Texas had Libertarian Longhorns, its own little original old school libertarian group that still continues to this day. That's still doing a lot of work. Jose Nino's there, so it's definitely repping the younger crowd. So the bookstore is not all glamour, glitz, and bags of money flowing in, of course.
No.
There's also been some controversy and some potential danger here at the bookstore. As I understand it, there was once a potential firebomb plot. There was once a young individual who was likely an FBI agent provocateur at the time, because he later demonstrated himself to be an FBI agent provocateur, that encouraged 3 people to throw a Molotov cocktail down here and burn up all your books. Tell us about that.
Yes. Well, I don't actually know much about the actual plot. This is all information that people can read about. Alex Jones actually wrote a big article on it. You can actually go to the source itself. If you just Google Scott Crow and Brave New Books, you can read his sort of confession on a left-leaning anarchist site where he basically says that during the trial of Brandon Crowder and another individual, I forget, who were on trial for potentially throwing Molotov cocktails at police cars at the Republican National Convention in 2008, which they didn't go through with. But their defense was that a certain individual named Brandon Darby, who at the time was an FBI informant, had encouraged them to throw these Molotov cocktails at these police cars. And their defense was that he was the one instigating it, encouraging it, inspiring it. And Scott Crow wanted to testify against the FBI in court that Brandon Darby had a history of this because he had been involved in the same sort of scenario where Brandon Darby was contacting people in the activist community around Austin to firebomb this bookstore. So it stands to reason that it's a pretty honest account. Scott was willing to testify in court against the FBI. You have to be pretty sure that those events happened if you're willing to do that. And I've also had it confirmed by a few different people that were approached by Brandon. You know, I'm sorry, man, I didn't know it was your bookstore kind of thing. Yeah, well, it shouldn't be any bookstore. You should, I don't care what kind of bookstore you are.
Yes, don't bomb people. Don't bomb bookstores. That's just kind of a rule of thumb.
Yeah, exactly.
We'd like to invoke into people, just don't bomb bookstores and don't bomb anybody, particularly on the other side of the world, but we don't have to go there.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's true, though. Nobody took him up on it, so I should be encouraged by that people recognize that, bombing bookstores is probably dumb, no matter how much you disagree with what's being said there. And in fact, people probably didn't disagree with a lot of what we said. They just didn't know us. But, yeah, so that's the Darby thing. I think what's very interesting about the whole thing in hindsight is that just 3 months after this supposed bomb plot was to take part at the bookstore.
This was back in 2007 or so, right?
Well, they wanted to firebomb us in December of 2006.
Oh, so just about when y'all opened up.
About 4 months after we had opened up.
Oh, wow.
And, but what's interesting is about 3 months after that, there was a very high-profile firebombing that took place just about 6 blocks away from here.
They're still rebuilding.
It was called the Texas Governor's Mansion. And if you look at the tape of that, it does resemble people that we may have or may not have talked about tonight. I don't want to say anything. That all I know is
bombs.
nothing
about this.
It does fit that pedigree. And if you actually have kept up with that story, DPS recently held a press conference in which they tried to link the 2 kids that had served time and were on trial for the firebombing in Minneapolis for that firebomb plot. The DPS has tried to link those kids with the firebomb that was thrown at the Texas Governor's Mansion through their car. They said a white Grand Cherokee, and these kids drove a white Grand Cherokee. And so that stands to reason if Brandon Darby was involved in that firebomb plot, then it's a possibility that he may have been involved in that plot. And so people, if you're involved in the DPS, I would, encourage the DPS to maybe look into that. And I, in fact, have called the DPS and asked them to look into it. But I don't know if they want to. I don't know. I think the FBI payroll may be above their pay grade. So anyway, that's a little bit about Brandon Darby. But I did want to say one thing about the bookstore that I'm really proud of that just happened recently. And that is one of the goals of the bookstore. One of the reasons I woke up to a lot of this was actually I was in college during September 11th, and sort of fell down the rabbit hole when it comes to alternative information. But
we don't talk about September 11th on the show.
Sure. But one of the things that struck me about alternative information was how demonized it was in academia. And I'm not talking about, going to Alex Jones's website and printing out articles. I'm talking about declassified government documents. I was showing this to professors and peers all throughout my history and American Studies department, and I was basically laughed out of the room and castigated as a conspiracy theorist for showing declassified documents to them. And it was very discouraging as a young student. And so basically for the rest of my academic career, I kept my head down, towed the party line, wrote the papers, regurgitated, Lincoln was a god and Hamilton is awesome. And so just to get through it, and then, basically if you were to psychoanalyze me, I think this store's location is part of my revenge for those 3 years. But just recently, a friend of mine, Rick Richardson, he's sort of an aging hippie guy. He knew some of the most famous people in pop culture in the 1960s and 70s. He hung out with Bob Dylan, knew Allen Ginsberg, knew the Doors, knew a lot of these people. And so he's recently gone back to the history and American Studies department at UT. This guy's 68, 69 years old, and he's studying at the university. But he is basically what these people are reading about. He's lived the life of what these people are reading about. So he has tremendous respect over there. I mean, they all sort of look up to him because he tells these amazing stories about hanging out with Allen Ginsberg and hanging out with Bob Dylan. And so anyway, I sort of turned him on to a lot of this information about 2 years ago. So he has the ear of the American Studies, the head of the American Studies department at the University of Texas. And only recently I've come to discover that the head of the American Studies department has actually been woken up to a lot of this stuff and agrees with it because of the stuff I have given Rick over the years. So my revenge has finally come full circle. I feel like Rick has avenged me, and he actually wants me to go into his office hours, this certain professor, and give him a homework assignment, right? So this is every student's dream, right? Is to give the professor a homework lesson rather than the reverse. So
came around.
That is a pretty cool development. I'm pretty happy with that.
Let me ask you about 9/11 truth. You've been around for
No. 9/11 lies. I'd rather have lies. Comforting
9/11 lies.
Comforting lies. I prefer comforting lies here on my own damn show. None of this truth stuff, because truth makes me nervous, and I don't like truth. And no, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Truth scares me, frightens me before I sleep at night. So 9/11 truth. You've been around the 9/11 truth movement since the early days.
Sure.
And you've continued that activism here at the bookstore. It's a living, breathing, physical personification, buildingification of 9/11 truth. There's a 9/11 truth section. Tell us, do you think is preaching 9/11 truth futile at this point? Is there ever going to be a new investigation? Or do people even care anymore?
Right.
I mean, I still mention it when people bring it up. It's not in my repertoire of in my discussions with people. I more try to get people to see how the state is immoral, the general stuff. But if it comes around to terrorism, I'm quick to point out Building 7 and the likes. But what's your view on the 9/11 truth movement in 2013? And do you see any hope for any truth or any massive event ever taking place where we can finally get some justice about what happened on that day?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. I think it's certainly not as effective as it once was. I think the 9/11 Truth Movement sort of crescendoed in 2005 or 2006 when I was involved with it, and it really did have a groundswell and a lot of people involved. And honestly, I think, educating people about the nature of the state and how the nature of the state is how it can organize to kill people and kill people in large numbers is something that we probably should lead with. But I think it's still relevant in lots of ways. I think whether you're fighting the TSA, Homeland Security, the Patriot Act, NDAA, these all relate to 2 hours on one morning in September in 2001. Without that event, none of these horrible branches of the tree of tyranny would be around if it wasn't for that horrible event. They would never be able to justify the kinds of intrusions into our private lives. They would never be able to justify what's done to our civil liberties without that event. And everyone's experienced this. Well, you have this very well-articulated argument about preserving civil liberties, and then the person you're arguing with will say, well, we have to stop another September 11th, right? We have to stop another September 11th from happening. And how do you argue with that without arguing about the event itself? And so I think it's still relevant, and I think it's something that everyone needs to look at. And I think what I'm really frustrated with is a lot of libertarian people, a lot of
Austin Peterson types.
Yeah, a lot of people that are aware of how the state operates are reluctant to concede what 9/11 is, and it is a state operation. Whether you believe that the state was involved, you have to concede there was a massive cover-up of the event by the state. And so, why trust, you can demonize the state everywhere else in our society, right? It provides horrible education, it, abuses us, or abuses our civil liberties, sets up these police states, but somehow it gets investigations like the 9/11 Commission perfectly right. I mean, that's that kind of sort of disingenuous. It's very hypocritical, in my opinion, to call yourself a libertarian and not at least be open to the fact that the state organizes itself in such a way that it can do these sorts of events.
Oh, but our good buddy Glenn Beck is a libertarian,
right.
and he
The
took
leader
down
of the libertarian.
he took down Deborah Medina when her bid for the governor caught her off guard. I don't shame or shun or get her. She was put in a really awkward situation.
Sure.
But to this very day, I don't care what good things Glenn Beck does. I know he does good things. I know he says some good things, but he is a complete douchebag, and I will never let him in my personal libertarian tent. In fact, cue up douchebag of the day, because our good buddy, the libertarian, air quotes, libertarian Glenn Beck, you, sir, are the winner of the douchebag of the day award here on the Caleb Leverett Show. Yeah, that's right.
Glenn Beck.
Glenn Beck.
It's a double header today. We got Patrick Oborski and Glenn Beck. We got double douchebags.
Yeah, they're
double douchebags for both ends.
Yeah, that's right. They're tied for being first place for douchebag of the day award on
two douchebags tied together in both ends.
Glenn Beck, he'll never hear this. He probably, he never know. He might.
He covers John Bush's Agenda 21 activism. He might be more tuned in than we think.
Okay, well, yeah, and again, like I said, he did a good thing. He at least covered you. I wish he'd have consulted you on doing what he did. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Inaccuracies.
He had some inaccuracies there, but I'll never buy into the Glenn Beck people. Like I said, I know he does some good things. He said some good things. He's done some positive things, but he's also done some severe douchiness, man.
Some hatchet jobs whenever he attacked Ron Paul movement, claiming that they're potential domestic terrorists. Yep. He does the same moves on Jones.
Yeah, you Ron Paul people are really getting on my... I've had it up to here with you Ron Paul people. And then just to question Deborah Medina, who is running for a state level of office, to question her. Deborah, I get the most. I just mentioned you were coming on, and I've get so many emails saying you were part of the 9/11 Truth Movement. Okay, really, Glenn? Really, Glenn? Show me the emails. I want to see all these emails that you got. Yeah, okay, we'll back them up. Or is it an ambush from the Perry bots or from... Whoa, that is one massive dog.
FBI's on the prowl. Who's coming up? There.
Yeah, good job. Good. Give that dog a beer.
Brandon
Yes, thank you. Watching out for the bad guys.
And by
wasn't
bad
it
guys,
Perry who had the robocalls ready to go after that?
Yeah, immediately fired robocalls
Within 1 minute.
within 1 minute.
And who do you think, douchebag of the day winner Beck has on his program all the time, promoting Perry's book about liberty and freedom?
I'm fed up.
Perry's libertarian too, isn't he?
Oh, libertarian. Perry and Tag
we're
go
all
way back.
comedians tonight, aren't we, Heather?
Yeah, but what about Alex Jones? After Glenn Beck gave her the punch in the back of the head, Jones went and punched her in the gut when she responded, right?
I think that was irresponsible.
So she lost her conservative, Tea Party, more establishment base on Glenn Beck, and then Jones started bashing her like hardcore style. He bashed Ron Paul once like that too. Because she responded on a later show, somewhat throwing truthers under the bus, even though the guy interviewing her was kind of leading her into it. But she was trying to do damage control at that point. Right. I think she should have stuck with the same answer. Like, no, I don't think that 9/11 truthers are crazy. I have questions. You don't have questions? You're a freaking, I
don't really think Alex should be beat up for voicing his opinion of Deborah, but when he said, I'm not going to vote and you shouldn't vote for her either, that was irresponsible.
Well, he said more than that. He went off on a classic Piers Morgan-style anti-Deborah Medina bash session. He did! Yeah! You probably still voted for her, though. Okay.
No, I think what he did voice his opinion. I think we were all hurt.
It was strong.
For about 10 minutes after that Deborah Medina thing, I was literally unpinning Deborah Medina stuff here in the store. I was pretty hurt by it. But I saw how weird the interview was, and I learned to forgive her very quickly. And I think Alex was just sort of going through that on air with everybody, that same sort of hurt that we all felt. And I think it's fine that he voiced all that. But when he said, I'm not going to vote and you shouldn't vote either, I think that was really irresponsible for him to say that.
Deborah has kind of a learning experience as someone who does interviews and might end up having that question at some point. To know what I'm going to say, because it is a marginalizing issue. It is an issue that needs to be answered appropriately and be thought out, because you don't want to become the next Deborah Medina, that you have all of this lined up, you run a kick-ass campaign, and then you allow one radio interview to just cripple it all. I took that as a learning experience, and
so hopefully
I'll be able to answer.
Heather Fazio, this is Camille whatever with Fox 7 News. We see y'all battling against the TSA. You don't happen to belong to this 9/11 truth camp, do you? Do you believe that the government had something to do with 9/11?
Because I've got so many emails that say to the contrary.
Well, I'd first like to say that I resent the fact that you're bringing this question up to try to marginalize my efforts to protect this legislature. But I will say that I think that it's obvious that we've been lied to about what happened on 9/11, considering that 6 out of the 10 commissioners have come forward saying that we need a new investigation.
Appeal to authority.
Nice.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Strong.
That's a good response.
And then back to the bill.
That's the executive director of Texans for Accountable Government. Jacob Block and Pivot.
So are you willing to disown the movement? Are you willing to separate yourself, remove yourself from the truthers?
Oh, none of them.
From the people who do nothing besides pass out flyers and DVDs on a corner rather than putting real work in that's actually going to change policy? Sure.
Okay.
You'll abandon them?
I don't work with them. I'm not going to do that. I think that there's much more effective things that they could be doing with their time. I mean, that's where I started out. That was how I first got involved, was with We Are Change, was realizing that I've been lied to, feeling like a victim, realizing that people really could be that evil to murder people for their own agenda. Who knows whether it's government or people that are quasi-involved with government, whoever they are, there was an agenda that was fulfilled that day, and ever since then, and it's awful. And But there are more productive things that we can do to help to stem the tyranny that we're seeing that's happened as a result of that. That's going to be much more productive than handing out DVDs and flyers on a street corner, talking to people who have no interest in receiving the message at all. I think that if we are to have a 9/11 Truth movement, it first of all needs to abandon that title because it's been given to them by the establishment and start talking about facts and not that they don't talk about facts, but finding appropriate venues to actually bring up the issues like committee hearings. When we're talking about 9/11 being a pretext for creating a police state in Texas, let's talk about the fact that, increasing these so-called security measures don't actually keep us safe. And let's talk about the facts about that. The 9/11 Truth movement can manifest itself in a way that is more productive than it is currently.
You are feisty. Wow, you're feisty. You're outnumbered 4-1 as far as gender here on the round table, and you're holding your ground. Good for you. I really admire that. No wonder Tag loves you and doesn't want to get rid of you. Wow.
Yeah. So Heather, do you think it's relevant to bring this up when at state level there are issues of federal involvement, whether it's through different grants or different federal programs, for instance, the TSA? Do you think it is appropriate to cite 9/11 as a pretext? I'm just curious because I think that's pretty bold and it is risky, and I think 9/11. I think one thing 9/11 truthers do, and I use that euphemistically too, but I don't know if they feel comfortable doing it, and they understand that people like you who are fighting this day in and day out at the Capitol, they want to back out from that because they don't want to marginalize you. So they just want to educate people about the event, but they don't want to sort of marginalize people until people have reached an education point where they can bring it up in committees and things like that. What do you think of that?
Well, I know that we're going to be wrapping up here soon, and this is a really deep topic.
Yeah.
And I think that with that we can bring up the theater of security that's been created as a result of 9/11 without bringing up the issue of who did 9/11. You know what I mean? Who was behind it? And so if we can not focus on exactly what happened that day and try to create theories about who was behind it and who did this, who did that, because we know that there was lots of ins and outs, rather we focus on the things that we can all see evidently, that a police state's being implemented, that we have security theater that's being used as an excuse to
Heather,
violate our rights.
I hate to cut you off. We are we're just flat up against the clock. I want to remind everyone that Jordan Page is going to be here at Brave New Books tomorrow, and also yours truly will be a guest host, so to speak, on the on the Rise Up radio show on LRN.FM. This is Caleb Leverett of the Caleb Leverett Radio Show, reminding you to always think outside the government, question everything, and we will see all you crazy cats here tomorrow at Brave New Books and also LibertyMovementRadio.com. I'm out.
7
Peace
p.m.
on these.
The Caleb Leverett radio program is dedicated to debunking the delusional American mythology known as statism.
Initiation of force is always immoral.
Always think outside the government. Always, 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 always think.
Always.